The Finance Subcommittee of the City Council is comprised of 5 council members and considers any or all questions appropriate for the purpose of considering the budget, including the creation of new positions to the payroll, changes to the employee classification plan, or any matters pertaining to increasing the City of Framingham employee headcount. The following City Council Finance Subcommittee meeting coverage is brought to you by the Government Channel, a service of the City of Framingham.
Order this meeting of the City Council Finance Subcommittee meeting for February 16th, 2021. All members are present. This meeting is being broadcast live on FraminghamTV.com. It's being recorded. It's also being shown on Facebook Live as well. Tonight on the agenda, we'll have public participation, and we'll have discussions on referral from the City Council for review and recommendation, easement relative to a solar energy project at McAuliffe Branch Library. Number 2, consideration of purchase of the Belknap Pool Club. And number 3, upon request of Councilor Stefanini, request to convene 4 budget forums in 2021, and then member prerogatives. So we're going to start with public participation. And given that we only have 3 items, and I know there's a packed house to talk about different issues, I'm going to take public comment now, and then as we get to each agenda item, there can be additional public comment after members of the subcommittee have participated. So all right, so right now we will do public participation, and we will start with Councilor Stefanini. You're recognized for up to 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Just for the record, my name is John Stefanini. I live in District 8. I'm here as a citizen this evening to avoid any open meeting law issues, and I'm advised by the chair I cannot be interactive or participate beyond that. My message is simple, and I know we've talked about it, but I thought, given the dialogue you had last time, and I watched your meeting, but I did not participate because I was advised not to. Framingham should do what our state, many communities, and what we in Framingham have done many times over the decades, and convene fiscal transparency forums. They don't have to be a hearing on the budget for the current year. They increase the level of understanding and awareness about revenues, budgets, the way in which we deal with monies. And I appreciate commentary from our council, but Article 2, Section 7 is pretty clear. If we can't collaborate and convene a meeting with the executive, we can compel the executive to come and to talk to us about what we need to. We need to get our legislators and our folks together to figure out, how are our revenues today? Are we exceeding where we should be in terms of benchmarks? Are we doing well? How do we get to a point where we have a better understanding of revenues first, then deal with our audits, then deal with our allotments, and then deal with our physical assets? There's a way to do this, and we need to stop telling ourselves how we cannot do this and figure out a way we can do it, because we need to figure out how to be more transparent in our budget. We don't need to look any further than our school department, which is already talking about how their departments operate and work and listening to ideas. And so I would implore you, whether by resolution, rule, or ordinance,
10 more seconds.
Utilize the powers in the charter and figure out a way to bring transparency to our budget process. Thank you so very much. Good luck. I'll watch you on TV tonight.
Thank you. Is there other folks for public participation? So you can either speak now, or you can wait until the agenda item and then go after members of the subcommittee. I don't see any digital hands up, but speak up if you are wishing to and you're not. Mr. Winnett, did you want to speak now?
I would like to speak before your discussion on the Belknap Pool Club, but I can wait till that agenda comes up. But I would like to speak before your discussion.
Well, if you want to speak before, then you should speak now, because once we get to the agenda item, members of the subcommittee will go first.
Okay. Members of the subcommittee that you will be talking about the Belknap Pool Club property. And the subject is, shall the city exercise their right of first refusal to purchase the Belknap Pool Club and Tennis Club property for $315,000? I have sent you a note, and I'd like to basically recommend publicly that there are 10 questions you ought to be asking yourself, and I'll read them first within my 2 minutes. 1, is the location appropriate for a city recreational purpose, tennis and swimming? 2, is the purchase price reasonable? 3, does the city want to expend the funds necessary to bring the facility up to code? That's $1 to $2 million. Number 4, can the facility be made operational at a cost less than the administration has estimated? 5, are there operational expenses that need to be added to the park and recreational budget? 6, are there other projects that should be funded before this project or in preference to this project? 7, is there a benefit or liability to the city if the property is purchased and not used? 8, does the city want to prevent the property from being developed with a loss of tax revenue, that is real estate tax? 9, has the executive summary issues and that are listed in the documentation and the items for consideration, which are also listed in the documentation, have those items been addressed? Number 10, is there additional information that the administration should be requested to provide? Or to say it another way, does the City Council Finance Committee want to request that the administration provide additional information? I suggest that one way to address this issue is to address these questions, and I look forward to hearing your discussion later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy Pawelka, you have up to 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, councilors, for hearing my statement. I represent myself. I'm in District 1 and Sustainable Framingham, the grassroots group addressing climate change. We're here to speak tonight to urge you to get this solar project at the McAuliffe Public Library moving. It does not have to set a precedent, but it will be setting an example. The example is that the city is now doing solar. It's really important to get our first installation up and running as soon as possible. The councilors may want to go big and get some amazing deal if we want to start thinking about the city as a whole. And that's great for future opportunities. Let's not make this one wait. If councilors are interested in learning more about all the different municipal opportunities for solar, Sustainable Framingham is happy to help organize a session presenting the different options and diving into the details. And I'm sure there would be many partners on that. Again, this is a power purchase agreement. There is no cost to the city. This is not costing our taxpayers anything. In fact, it is saving the taxpayers money. One of the only ways we'd get a better financial return would be if the city wants to buy the solar panels. That would be a fantastic project, but I just don't think that's possible right now with our budget concerns. So the power purchase agreement is a financial saver. It's a public statement, a public example that Framingham is moving forward with solar. It's a win-win, it's ready to go, and it helps everyone. So I urge you not to delay on this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else for public participation? Mr. Stote, did you want to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that one of the things that I watch happen over and over again when we discuss projects like the McAuliffe solar system is the fact that we don't monetize the cost of not doing stuff. I mean, the bottom line is this is a value to the taxpayer, and it's a value to our public health. The IPCC has told us that we have to get busy on this, and so the thing that gets lost is the time between this actually gets put up and the time that we decide to actually do it. There's a cost to that. We are losing both taxpayer dollars, and we're losing our opportunity to actually deal with the greenhouse gas problem, which is not going to go away and is actually escalating. So I would encourage the subcommittee to pass this back to the full committee, and for the full committee to put it into law and get this project off, because we have a lot more projects behind it and we desperately need to deal with the issues behind our climate crisis. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, is there anybody else for public participation? Speak now, or we're going to move on. Just scrolling through.
Yes, I would like to speak.
Chat, it looks like they'd like to speak.
Okay, who was that who just spoke up?
It just says
Tim.
Mike. Tim.
Okay, Tim, if you just want to identify yourself, and then you can go ahead for up to 2 minutes.
Yes, Tim Brainerd. I live in District 1. I'm also speaking in favor of the solar project. I remember back a couple of years ago when some of the members of the Finance Committee, now on the Finance Committee, were running for the offices. And I remember that one of the candidates, I believe it was Mr. King, who said that he would look for win-win opportunities in the area of sustainability. And I think the audience really liked that. It was a large audience. I think those opportunities he also said the opportunities would help us make progress in the area of sustainability and save the city money. So this is a win-win opportunity. We pay nothing up front and we get somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 in savings over the life of the contract, as shown in the meeting materials for that meeting. So in favor of saving money and no cost to the municipality. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, did I get everybody? And thank you, Councilor Cannon, for pointing that out. Sorry I didn't see you before, Tim, in the chat. All right, so seeing none, we'll go on to our agenda, which the first item is the solar energy project at the McAuliffe Branch Library. Mr. Luce, are you here? So at our last meeting, we requested a comparison of the PPA versus alternatives. And if you're looking at the public packet, it was a little complicated trying to get it included in there on Friday, but at the end of the packet, I believe starting around page 200 are the new materials. And Mr. Luce, did you want to walk us through that comparison briefly?
Sure. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Councilor Steiner, would you like me to, I guess, maybe just briefly walk through the memo and as part of that cover the table there, or do you want me to go through that, I guess, the larger table that was provided as a separate attachment? I guess I'll go through that memo. That might be the easiest. And then,
okay.
Yeah. And then if there's additional questions, we can jump into that. But thank you, everyone, for your questions and your interest in this project. The memo I provided outlines the cost comparison between an outright purchase and the power purchase agreement, as we discussed. And then there's also some additional detail there. So I guess I'll just walk through from the start. Provided some additional detail regarding solar power purchase agreements as provided by the EPA, and provided some of the benefits of utilizing a power purchase agreement as opposed to another financing model for a solar PV system.
So, Mr. Chairman, I don't know how you want to do this. I do have a question about that first table there, Sean, on page 2 of your memo.
Why don't we let Sean just briefly go through the memo, and if folks are following along at home, it starts on page 201 actually, and then
I'm sorry, I'm actually looking at 190. Am I 201? It looks like it's in here twice. So okay, yeah, 201 looks to be the same.
Sorry about, I'm using the non-agenda version, so I'm going to actually scroll to that to make sure I'm on the same. So what page was it? 219?
In the public packet, it's page 202. It's page 2 of your memo. And if you just want to explain the relevance of that data, that will probably answer my question.
Okay, sure. Are you talking about the graph at the bottom?
Cost comparison of solar PV finance options.
Oh, of course. So that graph is just, and I had originally meant to have them both on the same page, but that graph is just a summary of the last row in the table on the preceding page. So the net savings over term, that is essentially those numbers just it was originally supposed to be, one page, but I couldn't fit everything together. So that's just outlining the savings.
And you know what? I was actually looking at the footnote there, thinking it was the footnote to that graphic, but it's a footnote to something else in the memo. I'm gonna just let you talk, Sean, because I have questions and I'm not helping you right now. So we'll chime in at the end. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem. We provided some of the additional benefits of power purchase agreements for municipalities. Just resuming on page 202 of the public document. I also provided some information about the use of power purchase agreements by municipalities. So I believe we mentioned at the last meeting that there were 32 municipalities that have used the Power Option Solar Program. But in addition, there are a variety of other municipalities such as Braintree, Dartmouth, Medway, Melrose, Natick, Methuen, and Wayland. So they're a popular option. And the next part of the memo is just a description. That first graph, as I mentioned, is just showing the net savings comparison between the two different financing options for a solar PV system that we looked at. And the table following that provides some additional detail. And so for the first row description, every row underneath that describes an economic cost to the city over the term for both a PPA and an outright purchase. In an effort to compare them, it also provides some of the information on the source of the data. Additionally, we provided the economic value generated over the term that would be due to the city under each type of financing option. And then the final row is the net savings over the term, which is the savings subtracting those costs from the economic value. Those are the net savings for that project type. And so that's how we based our analysis. These are the main factors that influenced it. And the rest of the memo, and I can get into detail about this if it's desired, but the rest of the memo is basically just taking the reader through the more detailed spreadsheet that has more of the data and assumptions that were utilized to do this cost comparison. So I can definitely go through that. Maybe afterwards, if there are questions, we can kind of go through that. And then the last section of the memo was just a description about the RFQ process that Power Options utilized to select energy for the solar program, and about some of the ongoing work that they had done to ensure competitive pricing for this program. So I'm happy to go into detail about any of that and answer do my best to answer questions.
Thank you. And thank you for preparing the memo. So are there councilor comments, questions? Councilor Cannon.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. You've been incredibly helpful and accessible, and have done a great job here and throughout your tenure with Framingham. So thank you for everything that you do. I guess the concerns that I have here, I'm still unclear on the tax credit references, because they're referenced in this document, and everything that I've been able to find out shows that government entities don't actually qualify for those tax incentives. We seem to be hopeful that the developer, the solar vendor, will pass their savings on to us, but they're not receiving a tax benefit because it's a government project. So I'm just questioning the veracity of some of these numbers. The question that I had on and that was the question that I started to allude to at the beginning, and the monetization of the solar investment tax credit for a government entity, which can currently represent up to 26% of a solar energy system's value. That points to data in your memo from the Department of Energy referencing residential solar installations. That's that 26% tax credit. So there just seem to be a lot of details here. And by the way, this is not your job, Sean. So I'm not picking on you at all. My concern is that a lot of this should have been vetted by our procurement, purchasing, attorney. I mean, we got a lot of people that I'm surprised didn't see this. what I'm still struggling with, and maybe someone in procurement or purchasing or finance can give me some insight. We're relying on one vendor that was chosen by a third party in 2015, and there's a memo. Sean, maybe you could point me in the right direction here. The memo from Power Options. I've seen a lot of memos from Power Options in because they're everywhere and they deal with a lot of public entities. This is the only memo that I've seen that doesn't have a date on it. And all the memos that I've seen from other municipalities have this type of formatted memo, but this in the same spacing, but this one almost looks like the date has been taken off of it. Do we know what the date of this memo was?
Off the top of my head, I'm not aware. I could definitely.
Mary Ellen?
Actually, I can check the PDF document. So.
I'm looking at it. It was provided to us with the date taken off. So if the date was actually taken off, or if this happens to be the one memo that I've been able to find from Power Options that doesn't have a date on it, it would be interesting. But anyway, the content of the memo talks about all the work that had been done, and it's really thorough and it's really impressive. I'm not familiar with Power Options other than through the discussions we've had, but it keeps pointing to meetings that happened in 2015. And that, I think, was the crux of the thing that was of concern to some members of the subcommittee is that, hey, listen, going solar in Framingham is probably one of the few issues where the entire city council is probably unanimous and united. But it's knowing that this is a 20-year deal and we're relying on not just a market analysis that was pre-COVID, but one that was done now the better part of a decade ago in an industry that has changed so dramatically. So I guess I'm just wondering what the hesitation is of revisiting this so we can move quickly. By the way, the reason PPAs are, great are great tools is because they're pushed by the solar industries because that's where they make the most money. They'll make more money from us and our taxpayers on a PPA than if we bought the system. And maybe that's the best deal. I just am still uncomfortable looking at all this data that we've really looked at it, not with just one vendor chosen by somebody in 2015, but based on the hyper competitive solar industry that exists now. I just want to know what it's very easy for in residence, PPAs are phenomenal because they will pay for a new roof. They'll pay for all kinds of upgrades to get that PPA, that solar array on your roof, because that's how valuable it is. I just don't have the sense that we in Framingham know what the long-term, what are we giving up by not looking seriously, at least considering a purchase. And I can see that we seem to be, it's almost as if we were shopping for a car and we talked to one salesperson at one dealership who told us we have the best deal and here are all the reasons why, but we trusted that and didn't undertake any efforts to vet that. So I feel like we as a municipal enterprise haven't done our part for Sean, who's worked so hard on this. This is really something where our procurement folks, our finance folks, our purchasing folks, our attorneys really need to get together and do it quickly. These solar companies, they want to move quickly and be given a relationship with Framingham because this is just the beginning. And we've waited 3 years to get this far, longer than that. But to be relying on something that's so dated that we're going to have to live with for such a long time, I had hoped in the time since our last meeting, we would have addressed that. But I'm still seeing a lot of data that is woefully out of date. So my concerns are still there. And I think when we talk about, this is the last point that I'll make, Mr. Chairman, when we talk about how there's no upfront cost, this is the Finance Subcommittee. We need to take a beat and ask why that is. Well, it's that way. There's no upfront costs, and the solar companies are happy to pay that cost because the long-term financial return lies with the solar company. So maybe a PPA is still the best deal, but I want to know with reliability on current market conditions, not ones that are 6 years old, what we're giving up by doing a PPA, and if one with the vendor that made sense 6 years ago is still the way to go today. It seems reasonable, and it doesn't seem like it's a whole lot of work, and these companies are anxious to do business with Framingham. I just don't know why we're not letting them move forward so we can do this quickly. Sean, did you find the date of that memo?
I did. So that memo, it was dated and I apologize, it wasn't on the top. That's how I received it. I looked in the properties of the memo. That document was created August 22nd of 2020. And so, it would have had to have been created after they negotiated the extension.
I'm sorry, the document was created, like the PDF was saved, or the text the memo was written?
Correct. And so we had requested that recently as well, just to confirm that we had the most recent version. So that's directly what I received from Power Options.
Okay, so it sounds like they took the date off of a memo because everything else in here refers to 2015. So is it just an old memo with the date taken off?
There is actually on the second page, there is a reference on the end of the third paragraph. In August of 2018, Power Options and Select executed an amendment, and then subsequently there was another amendment that brings the agreement through March 31st, 2022.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Puzzling, the one memo that they seem to put out that didn't have a date. Thank you.
Mr. Luce, did you want to respond to anything in particular in there? And I also saw the CFO and Mr. Kieser have popped on here. I know at the beginning, Councilor Kennan was asking about the tax credit situation.
Oh, I apologize. Councilor Steiner, was that directed to me? I think I just missed.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know if there's any elements of that you wanted to respond to in particular, but.
Sure. So I just went to double check because I wanted to make sure I did not link the incorrect one. So the document that I had referenced was a resource for state and local governments regarding the federal tax credit. I apologize. I'm just looking back to ensure that that's correct. And just to provide some additional detail about how that works. So the federal tax credit is something that as a municipal entity, if we were to install the solar energy system ourselves and own it, we would be ineligible to take that tax credit. So really the benefit with a power purchase agreement is that we don't own the solar energy system. We're not responsible for it. Essentially, because Select Energy in this case would own the solar energy system, they could take advantage of that tax credit. And that would allow us to have that incorporated into the financial benefits that the system would give us. In the case where we install and own it ourselves, we have no option to do that.
So they are able to take that tax credit, even though they're performing the work or owning the panels.
Because everything that I've seen says it's only those are residential credits. So, I mean, are we just taking them in good faith? This is the trouble of not having multiple vendors competing for our business, because I don't know if we're just, oh no, we do a lot of solar deals with, residential. And so we get that. I don't know what they're telling us, but in all of the government issued documents that I can find, those solar incentives are not for government installations, regardless of the ownership structure. So if there's data out there that if I'm wrong, just point me in the right direction, because I haven't been able to find that.
Sure. I'm trying to look through the document now to see if, where that's explicitly listed, but so the ITC, the investment tax credit, is for commercial utility and residential solar projects. Municipal entities, like the reason why it doesn't directly apply to municipal entities is because we're tax exempt.
Right.
So basically, if we install the solar energy system, we own it. We are, tax exempt, so we can't take on that value. The only way is if another type of entity that is eligible owns the solar energy system. And so that's where that tax benefit comes from.
I'm just having trouble verifying that, because all of the published data that I can find, and perhaps Mary Ellen, I don't expect you to be an expert in this stuff, Sean. This is not, I see Mr. Petrini on here. I would imagine Jen Pratt, our Chief Procurement Officer, is here. I can't tell if this is and this question came up the last time, so I'm a little puzzled that they're not chiming in for you, Sean. I'm sorry about that.
It's right in the PPA agreement, explicitly written in the PPA.
Where?
Somewhere in there. It's
Can you
a whole bunch of pages. I've read it. They own the equipment, and that's how they take advantage. It's explicit in there.
That's not Mr. Kieser. The question is, the community is being told that because of tax reasons and the fact that there is no upfront cost, that this is the best deal out there. Now, that very well may be. You're telling me that there's language that explicitly tells us this in the agreement. I've read it. I haven't been able to see that, so I'm asking you where it is. I recognize that they're not a government entity that owns it, but in my interpretation of reading the regulations govern these incentives, it's not who owns it, it's the type of installation it is, being residential, commercial, or in this case, governmental. Government doesn't seem to apply or doesn't seem to get these incentives regardless of who owns the system. The only thing that I can sort of think is that the sales group said, well, because we do a lot of these type of systems, we get these tax credits because we do a lot of residential installations, and therefore it makes sense that our costs would be lower, and don't you worry, we're going to pass the savings on to you. I don't see something that a government entity properly vetted I just don't see your financial claims substantiated, Mr. Keyser, in anything here. And I'm really not picking on Sean. I'm not trying to. I'm aching for the chief procurement officer to chime in so I can have a better understanding of the due diligence that's been undertaken since our last meeting, but it doesn't seem to be forthcoming.
Thank you. Councilor, Ms. Kelly, did you want to respond? And then we'll go to Councilor Stewart-Morales.
So I just wanted to remark on the fact that these entities, these private entities are paying, they are taxable. And so all of the equipment that they buy and they own is taxed at the state and federal level, including potential personal property tax. But they are taxed on their business and their equipment. It's their business tax. That's the incentive, and they're eligible for the business tax credits based on their business. It's not that they have so they don't get an exemption if they're doing a government project. We don't sign any tax. They're not eligible for tax exemptions based on buying our project. We don't fill out tax exempt forms for them to get credit for the tax exemption because they're doing a municipal project. So like other entities that are buying product on our behalf, some of that tax exemption translates through. In this particular instance, there's no CT5 that we would file for sort of allocating or allowing a business to get our tax exemption or our tax exempt status for the product. So they're on their own for taxes. They don't get the benefit of our tax exempt status.
Yeah, I think that
therefore, the tax exemption for them is the tax incentive or investment tax credit applies to them, and they don't get any benefit of the tax exemption on our behalf.
Yeah, I think the tax exemption not transferring over, I think makes sense. But I think that last part about them claiming that tax credit that we wouldn't be eligible for, I think that's the question, is whether they are in fact eligible to claim that tax credit, even though it's on government property. So I think that was this more specific question. I think it's clear that, if we own these panels, we wouldn't be able to claim that credit because of our status, but because in the PPA agreement, would they be able to claim that credit? So I think that was the more direct question.
But Mr. Chairman, just to put a fine point on this, Ms. Kelly just illustrated, there is no direct, there are claims in the document and in the conversation that there are tax incentives to do this. And it just should be overwhelmingly and abundantly clear to the public, because there's been some misinformation out there the last handful of days. And I'm going to hope that it was not intentional, but there really is no direct tax incentive. We're, I guess, hoping that this vendor, chosen by a third party 6 years ago, is extending us a good price. But one of the difficulties of us knowing if that's true or not, and I trust that they're operating in good faith, is that we haven't talked to other vendors. It's not like we went out and talked to 3 solar vendors in today's economy, not from 2015, and have found, what the real truth is. We would just never do a 20-year agreement without undertaking some sort of due diligence. And despite what Mr. Keyser claimed, his claim that there was explicit language about the tax credit that we would receive, and I'm paraphrasing a little, just isn't in there. So, I feel like this is going to be a long night, but it doesn't have to be. The thing that I'm still struggling with is we need to, and we can do this quickly, but the city needs to take what Sean has done, which is outstanding work, talk to a handful of, and pick 3. I don't, do your own process, but have a process and talk to a handful of solar vendors. Ideally, I suspect these companies are aching to begin a partnership with the city of Framingham. And if you want to start it as this one deal, fine. If you want to do it as a more comprehensive plan that I thought we've been waiting for the last 3 years, but however you want to do it, but let's at least be comfortable that the numbers we're getting are trustworthy and the numbers that we're getting are competitive. Because what I can tell you is that this one vendor knows that they're the one vendor that they're looking at. It's not a competitive process based on today's marketplace. And 2015 solar versus 2021 solar, it's just a world. It is the only thing in common is the sun. It is so much more competitive. And why the administration is digging into that this is the best deal without any of that due diligence, I don't want to dwell on that, but it gives me a lot of concern about our procurement processes overall, because we're certainly trusting a lot of salespeople here. But what is the downside? These companies want to move quickly. It won't take long. The downside, we're not required to do these RFPs, but what is the downside to, okay, it's 2021. This is not a perfect process. Getting updated information so we know what we're talking about and we know what we can trust and what we can just dismiss as salesmanship of, credits that may or may not apply. I just don't understand the downside there. So I'm at the point where I may even, do we want to make a motion to allow the administration to do that and then come back?
Well, why don't we hear from some other people before we start making motions?
Yeah, no, of course.
Thank you. Councilor Stewart-Morales.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think, I appreciate Councilor Cannon's desire for due diligence on a contract like this. And I think what's happening here is really a breakdown maybe in the communication or just in the understanding of the way that this industry works. But renewable energy credits, tax credits have been a thing in the renewable energy industry for many, many years. It's really what's gotten us, helped us get started moving away from fossil fuels into renewable energy. And in cases, this kind of in cases where like a government entity like us are not able to monetize tax incentives, it makes perfect sense for and this is a common practice in commercial companies that do solar, is that they will find ways of getting those tax benefits, of making use of them. And for a municipality like ours that can't monetize them, the power purchase agreement is very attractive because essentially what we're doing is we are letting somebody put solar panels on our roof. And then the power purchase agreement, as the name suggests, means that we are purchasing power from that business. So the business is going to put solar panels on our roof if we allow it with an easement. And then we are going to purchase the energy that those solar panels produce at a fixed rate for 20 years. This contract seems, the fixed rate is 11 cents a kilowatt. If you take a look at your own electric bill, you'll see that you probably pay more than 11 cents a kilowatt last month. And that's just for the energy provided. And then you probably paid twice as much for the supply of that energy. So when I look at my last electric bill, I'm paying upwards of 22, 23 cents a kilowatt on my home. So fixing this at an 11 cents a kilowatt for 20 years, that's where the benefit comes into us, comes back to Framingham. We're not able to monetize the tax credits. This commercial operation is, and the way that we receive the benefits back is by having this fixed, reduced rate. Also, the premise, a lot of the premise of Councilor Cannon's concerns are around that 2015 date, which is, if you read the memo and the part that Sean highlights in the memo is that Mr. Luz highlights in the memo is that although the original deal, the selection process was held in 2015, they have now revised that contract or re-extended the contract 2 or 3 additional times, and each time the change is the pricing. So there's a mechanism in place in that contract that although they struck the deal in 2015, every 2 years they update the pricing on it. So the current pricing that we would benefit from is the extension of 2019 through 2022. I think that should alleviate the concern of they went through a due diligence process to find out if that was still beneficial to stay in that contract and at what price it would be beneficial to do so. I think that the other thing that we should think about is, as we already heard from the procurement, the chief procurement officer, this contract doesn't fall under the rules of the RFP process. And what they've done to mitigate that is they've gone to this consortium of municipalities, nonprofits. Sean mentioned 32 communities in that have taken advantage of this program. But if you look at their at the information, they have over 500 customers in the in municipalities, not just all over New England. Hundreds of cities and towns and nonprofits, organizations have used this program. So they've gone through the process of vetting it each and every time. There's something to be said about being able to be part of that large group. It mitigates the risks that you might otherwise be concerned with. This project right now, all it's doing is saving us money. The only real concern is it saving us enough money? And when we're talking about $10,000 in utility costs a year over 20 years, I mean, if we were able to get 10 cents a kilowatt hour versus 11 cents a kilowatt hour by starting over and doing this whole process again, we are not talking about a lot of money. So at the end of the day, I think what's most important here is that we have, like Councilor Cannon said, the City Council, I'm sure, is supportive of this. We've heard from our community this week. We've received almost 40 emails in the last 5 days from people supporting this project. And we've heard from not just, we've heard from a lot of regular citizens, a lot of people I don't know, but I will point out some of the other names. We've heard from the leader of Sustainable Framingham, from the leader of the First Parish Green Team, from the chair of the Conservation Commission, the Library Board of Trustees, the director of the library. We've heard from, obviously, the sustainability coordinator. We've heard from the facilities director is here supporting this as well. We've heard from Steve Weissman, who does this for a living, has zero concerns and is encouraging us to do this. And he was also the chair of the CPA study group. We've heard from Transition Framingham. We've heard from Green Framingham United, Michael Croce, huge environmentalist in our community. We've heard from the Environmental Committee of the Democratic Committee. There is overwhelming support for this contract. And I'm sorry, Mr. Cannon, you don't understand some of the basic principles about the renewable energy industry. And so what we need to do is listen to the people that do understand it in this case. And that would be the exhaustive list of people that I just referenced and all the people that are here from the city administration recommending this project.
Thank you.
Chairman, if I may respond, just since I was mentioned directly twice.
We'll come back to you, but I did want to hear from the city solicitor because he raised his hand before, I think, about the tax issue that you'd brought up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was trying to start my video, but it's not allowing me to. So I just wanted folks to be aware that on page 14 of 63 of the documents, section 7D rather, of the power purchase agreement states ownership of tax attributes. The provider, and that's referring to Select, shall be the owner of any tax attributes that may arise as a result of the ownership and operation of the project, and shall be entitled to transfer such tax attributes to any person. customer, meaning the city of Framingham, shall provide reasonable assistance to the provider. Goes on from there. So there is language in the agreement that addresses it.
A follow-up on that, Mr. Chairman. That's very broad language. That says they may and they could, and that doesn't say they will and it's broad.
They will.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak to that? It says provider shall be the owner of any tax attributes. That's mandatory language.
Right. And the next sentence.
And it's entitled, if it wishes to transfer the attributes, that doesn't affect the ability to own them, Mr. Counselor.
We recognize that they may, any that agree. There's no bona fide language in there that says that any financial benefit becomes a benefit to the taxpayer of Framingham. Obviously, if some tax benefit is the owner of the property, if something comes up, it's theirs. But there's nothing that you just cited that says they will, they have to, they. That's very broad.
Okay, I think that to me is a totally different issue. So
agreed.
It's clear that we're not eligible for the tax credits. It's clear that they, by contract, are entitled to claim those if they wish. I don't know why they wouldn't. Whether they, somehow transfer the value to the taxpayers. I mean, I think it's. How do you actually figure that out? I think you just have to look at whether we're getting, a greater benefit than we would without the agreement. I don't think there's any way to, to know that. But that to me is a separate issue. All right, I see Councilor Leombruno, then Councilor King.
So thank you. Sean, thank you for all of your details. I have to say, we're the Finance Committee, so we're the ones that have to vet this stuff. So we have to ask the questions. I think that I can safely state that everyone on the city council is for solar. In fact, I would think it would be safe to say that we've been for it for over a decade and we languish behind everyone else. I would be safe to say that we're probably a decade behind people. Councilor Morales did mention that we had a lot of people reach out to us, but also because he asked people to. And I was reading one of his emails, and I believe he told people to send emails because this has been languishing in the hands of the city council since December. Over 2 months. We didn't get this till January 5th. Our first meeting on this, I believe, was January 13th. The mayor's had this for 3.5 years. So I understand that, having people reach out to us, and I responded to each and every person. I didn't get 40 emails, so I might have missed a couple, but every single person that reached out to me, I responded to with my phone number, offering to have any detailed discussion. And we're not trying to have, I believe, perfect get in the way of good. We don't need to have the best, but I think some of the questions, we just wanted to make sure we were somewhere between maybe the best and good enough. And I think that some of the questions that we're asking, and no different than what we would ask if we were buying these for our own homes or, looking into them. And so I don't think that the questions are out of line, and I don't think it's fair to say that if we ask questions that we're against it. And I don't think it's fair to, pit the City Council Finance Committee as being anti-solar because, we were told, people were told to reach out to us because we're stalling it. I was told we were stalling it, and we're a decade behind. All of a sudden now it's urgent. The mayor, I believe this goes back 3.5 years. I think meeting on it twice, being, asking the questions that we need to really ask because we're the ones that are tasked with spending the money of the taxpayers. We don't need perfect. We don't need it to be the best one out there. And it's not that, but it's a 20-year contract. It's a 20-year contract that if things change, are we going to be able to upgrade as we go along? There were a lot of questions, and I just think that asking them doesn't mean we're anti-solar, and I just don't think that's fair. And I also think that, putting this, having people reach out to the people on the Finance Committee under false pretenses saying that, we're against something to try to change our minds. We don't need our minds changed. We just need to make sure that whatever deal that it's a 20-year contract. This isn't something that, and we're stuck with it. So I just wanted to bring that up. But there were a couple things, Sean, I was wondering if you could just, my question was I believe it's a decommissioning. Is that something that we have to pay for? I appreciate all the graphs and they were very detailed. But I kind of got lost a little bit in that with originally I thought over the 20 years it was going to be a $50,000 savings. And then I guess, is it 100? And I guess that decommissioning piece at year 20 is who's responsible for that? And is that something that we do have to pay? Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, Councilor Steiner.
Yes, go right ahead.
Thank you for the questions, Councilor Leombruno. Great question about, I guess we'll start with the decommissioning. If the city was to purchase and install and operate the solar energy system, that would be a responsibility for us to take care of the solar energy system through a power purchase agreement, such as the one proposed. That's all. That responsibility is all on Select, and there are terms that address that in the contract as well. So that cost that's illustrated in year 20. If you're looking at the larger table, the one that's on its own 11 by 17 page, that is the second set of rows on column F, and it's $49,000. So that is the cost that the city would be paying to remove the solar energy system, return the site to its prior conditions afterwards. But under a power purchase agreement, that is not a cost we would be responsible for. That would be included in the entire pricing that we receive, the energy pricing.
Thank you. I think for folks at home, and I know it's in there multiple times, but the chart that's on 191, with the power purchase agreement in one column and the outright purchase in another column, to me that really tells the big story in pretty clear language. And the bottom line, when you add up all the different factors, is that we would save a little over $100,000 with this PPA agreement. And if we were to instead purchase the panels, our savings would be about $64,000. And we don't have the risk that Councilor Stewart-Morales mentioned about fluctuations in energy costs or big maintenance issues that might arise. So to me, that chart is the most important one. Councilor King.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. The first one is for Ms. Pratt. Is she here? Ms. Pratt? Is she here? So many people on the screen, I cannot tell. Ms. Kelly, do you know if she's here?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Oh, thank you.
Hello.
How are you? Can you tell me if this was procured under the Section 25A process for solar procurements?
The city did not do a formal procurement process for this, but the original procurement, I don't believe it would have fallen under that specific Mass General law, but they did do a very thorough RFP process, as I said at the last meeting, that would have mirrored one done by either the state or the municipal governments.
So for us to sign on to them, we don't have to do that?
This is exempt, so this contract is exempt from.
Under 30B, right? And I'm not that familiar with it, so excuse me if I'm going down the wrong street. But I'm told there's a section of the law 25A,
correct,
which talks about. So you're familiar? Can you just maybe if you're familiar with it? I'm not all that familiar with it. I haven't had a chance.
Sure. So
what's that?
So I can tell you exactly what it says, but it's to do with energy programs that municipalities are allowed to enter into without a formal procurement process. Hold on one second, and I'll tell you.
Well, I don't mean to put you on the spot to look.
No, No, that's fine. So it's for, let's see, energy efficiency and demand reduction resources, cost effective for energy, natural gas, solar, and efficiency investment plans. So that's what it,
So, but I guess that's what I'm saying. Wouldn't we wouldn't have to procure it under that section?
no, because it's an exemption. So it allows you to move forward with this type of a contract without a formal procurement done by the municipality because it falls under MGL 25. And I forget the specific section, I'm sorry.
It's all right. But the question I have is, I understand it is, the city solicitor has his hand up. I suspect he doesn't want me to ask any more questions, so maybe he can answer the question quickly.
You can continue to ask your questions. That's no problem, Mr. King, but thank you. There's Chapter 30B, Section 1B, 33, subsection exempts, quote, energy contracts.
I don't deny. That's not my question. My question is there processes in other parts of other state laws that are required? I understand it's exempt there. I'm saying, are there other state laws that require us to go through a specific process? I don't know the answer to it. I'm just trying to find it out.
Mr. Keyser is raising the hand.
Yeah,
we're fighting over it.
So I wrote the legislation in 1997 to create this exemption. I wanted a straight up exemption for municipalities because of the nature of the complexity of the issue dealing with. But what did get included in the final legislation is that the process has to be approved by the Department of Energy Resources. So any program that municipalities are involved with are also vetted through the DOER. I've long lost the details of how they do that, where they do that, but even though municipalities are exempt, there are guidelines and such.
Right, so that's the question. Did we get this approved by them? Did we submit this and get it approved?
Well, it's not we. It'd be again. I long got out of the details on the process. Mary Ellen may be able to answer that.
I didn't know the details. Did we submit this as required, as why I thought is required for them before we entered into this?
Ms. Kelly?
So this would that would apply, the exemption would apply for us to buy if we were purchasing a power purchase or going through a power purchase agreement to directly buy energy. And so we do that on a regular basis. We go through a broker and then we notify the Department of Energy, the Department of Public Utilities, and the Attorney General's office when we procure energy through a PPA. That would be a gas contract, which we just did a 3-year, and literally just did this package, package detailing how we went through a broker and got bids for power purchase agreements for regular energy. The solar is a separate section. We do not have to go through the Attorney General's office for that because we're going through a collaborative, the Attorney General, the DOER, and Department of Public Utilities. We're going through a collaborative that has been approved, that's essentially operating in the state under state approval. The 25A function actually really applies if you heard the chief procurement officer, we're doing energy efficiency programs or upgrades to the mechanical systems or the systems, energy systems that are inside the city. Those follow 25A, and if I'm not going to remember the threshold, but if it's under $100,000 procurement, I believe we would go through, we don't have to do a bid process, we just do a quote process or best business practices process. And the 25A part is not for procuring energy as power purchase agreements, it's for energy system upgrades and procuring services and materials.
we didn't file anything under 25A with anybody when we entered into this because we feel like we're
No,
not.
it's not required.
It's not required. Okay. Took a while, but thank you. I have a couple of comments, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Sure, go right ahead.
So I do think that the one thing is, I kind of agree with what Councilor Leombruno said. It's just unfortunate we're getting an issue here of solar versus this contract and this process. They're really two separate issues. And I know there's not 34 participants on this meeting to listen to us talk about a contract. Somehow it was put out there suggesting that we were blocking solar. And I think to a person, each one of us at the last meeting said we fully support solar. Okay. And I do. I got about 25 emails this weekend. I responded, I think, to most, if not all of them. And the ones I didn't, it was just because they came in today. And I appreciate hearing from people. So I appreciate the opportunity to hear from people. And I appreciate the opportunity to tell people what the issue is directly. And a number of people said, oh, but I didn't realize that. And I think that's the part that's unfortunate. I don't know quite why we have to politicize the policy here, because all we're trying to do is work through a contract, which I think is our job. But instead, we've decided to politicize it like we're opposed to solar. And that's just 100% not correct. I think everybody's for solar. I think, like Janet said, this should have been done a long time ago. But I do think it's unfortunate that we're asked to do something in 3 or 4 weeks. And I think we've asked some very good questions. I mean, I think what Councilor Cannon pointed out about the shall language, but then the continuation. I mean, that's a great question. They get tax credits and they're not required to put them on to us. That's the way I read that, or at least I understand it from what Mr. Cannon said. That's a reasonable question. Maybe it's the way it goes. Maybe we're getting them. Who knows? But, those are reasonable questions to ask. And we continually and constantly seem to be in a position where the administration works on it and gets themselves satisfied with it for months and months and months. And then we're supposed to handle it in 2 to 3 weeks. And if not, we're opposed to the process. We are not opposed to the process. We're not opposed to the program. Actually, you're shaking your head. You were telling me back last September that you wanted to get this on the agenda, and it didn't arrive to the end of December. So, that's 3.5 months. So what took you 3.5 months when you told me in September you needed to have it on the agenda? So I didn't keep saying to you, well, I did actually a couple of times, but I was just for scheduling purposes. I didn't keep saying, you got to get this to us. You got to get this to us. I respected the time you needed. And, and then in December we had a little, I think there's a few weeks in there that was just scheduling issues. Okay. But, and then when we're in January, we're spending a couple of meetings on it. I just don't think that's unreasonable. And if we're really going to run a government where we're expected, I feel in many ways, the city council and certainly this committee at times is marginalized in the process. Okay. In that we're here and almost, I've told the mayor this to her face. She sometimes objects because we're exercising our own authority. We have authority, and this is one of the areas. And lastly, one of the problems here is, and I do feel the administration already tried to circumvent the process here. Your interpretation that we don't even have to approve the contract, which is normally our role, but because it's somehow interpreted because the town meeting approved it in 2016, which has been out of business for 4 years, that they gave the mayor permission to do it. I mean, that's a little bit of legal twister in my mind. Okay, I think a good faith approach would have been to come to us and say, look, we'd like to enter into this contract. We want you guys to be partners in this. This is what we're going to do. And so I just think all we want to do is have comfort and confidence that the contract is a good contract for Framingham. I think every one of us to a person is for solar and want to see more and more expansive solar. But to get the contract right and to take a couple extra weeks to do that, I just don't understand the criticism, and I don't understand, the rally against, some people in this committee because of the fact that we simply want to be sure we do it right. So I hope we do it right, and if we get these questions answered, I'm sure we can get it going. And 2 weeks for a 20-year project to me seems reasonable. So Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity to make my thoughts known and have my question answered.
Thank you. Councilor Cannon.
Yes, thank you. I concur wholeheartedly. The fact that this has become a political thing, pro-solar versus anti-solar, is just unfortunately and needlessly getting the public worked up over an issue that's not there. And I do remember everyone was at pains to say how, eager we are to get solar moving forward in Framingham. To just put a period on the language that the city solicitor raised, yes, he's right. It says the owner, that the solar company is the owner of those tax attributes, and that the customer, us, would facilitate claiming any tax benefits that we're entitled to, but it puts the burden on us, and no one can point to any tax benefits that we're due. So let's put the tax benefit conversation permanently aside, because as of right now, there is not a benefit there based on the language that the city solicitor was kind enough to point out. And there is considerable risk. If we decide 5 years from now of this 20-year agreement that there is a better opportunity, a better solution, or perhaps we just find a better circumstance, the risk to the city is that that's going to cost us an early termination fee of more than $200,000. Now, Councilor Stuart Morales was kind enough to cite his experience in renewable energy, but I think it's important to differentiate between residential and commercial and governmental. Everything in residential and commercial, to a great extent, is based on risk, because a residence may disappear, a business may disappear, but as a municipality, we are the gold standard customer as a government entity, because the government, typically, we pay our bills and we're not going anywhere. So by using this consortium, which sounds like a lovely organization, we are diluting our buying power with other great organizations that don't have the access to an economic foundation that a government entity has. So we're diluting our buying power, and those other organizations, the religious organizations, the cultural institutions, the ones that they list on their website, are able to wonderfully leverage our buying power. But it means that our contract is therefore built upon the risk that doesn't apply for a city. And I think had we gone out, and if we still do, talk to other providers, Councilor King pointed out last time around that there are great deals that a lot of municipalities join together that are offered through the Mass Municipal Association. And sometimes they're a great deal, and sometimes they're not. And this may be a great deal, or it may not be. But we have to live with this for 20 years. And for us to not, even though the state doesn't require us to go through a formal process, why wouldn't we want to go through our own? Why wouldn't the administration want to go through its own formal process to talk to a few vendors to see if we're really, at the very least, to know that this is a good deal for Framingham? It seems to have a lot of holes in it where there are opportunities for us to do better, and to do better quickly. And I don't know if buying a system, by the way, buying a system is not what it was a handful of years ago. If you buy these vendors typically will sell you a system, or they'll do a PPA. In both cases, they'll maintain the system, they'll take care of this. All of those things have been resolved by the marketplace, but we're just not having those conversations. So I would suggest putting out a formal process that's quick, or tell us what you want your process to be, but do something so we know that this is a good deal. I don't know that it's a good deal. I hope it is, but we haven't asked. The fact that it took this long for the tax question and what it really means to come out as in the murky way that it came across is really concerning. And to hear that because the state didn't require us to undertake a formal procurement process, we chose not to do on our own, is also concerning. This will become, just because it's the way municipalities tend to do business, this will be the template for future solar deals. And I hope there are a lot of them. And I don't want this deal, if we find out that this isn't as good of a deal as we thought, to be the default reason that we do this for what I hope is a lot of other solar installations. So, I think the administration can get this done and get it done quickly, because despite the miscommunication and all of the efforts to anger the public over the past, since our last meeting, everybody's on board with solar. But this is the Finance Committee, so we ask the tough financial questions. So that's where I am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Yeah, I at our last meeting, the subcommittee voted to request a comparison, and that's been provided. I don't know. To me, this seems like micromanaging in a way that's damaging. Tuesday night quarterbacking, if you will. I mean, if you look at that chart, and I'm not a solar expert. I've got panels on my roof, but
Which one? Which chart?
The chart that's on 191, which is the comparison chart that the subcommittee requested. All right, so the PPA, we're going to pay for the electricity, $184,000. If we own the panels, we wouldn't be paying for the electricity. So that's row one. Row two, the installation cost. Well, under the PPA, we don't have any installation cost. Otherwise, we'd be putting down $249,000. Operations and maintenance. Under the PPA, we're not responsible for that. If we purchased it, it's obviously an estimate, $47,000. Decommissioning it, they're going to take care of that in 20 years. Otherwise, we would be paying about $49,000. Insurance, $75,000. I mean, I think Mr. Luce, and I'm sure with the support of Ms. Kelly, provided us with the chart we requested. To me, it does a good job summarizing, and I do think that it's the perfect getting in the way of the good. Maybe as Councilor Leombruno mentioned, this might be like I think that we may be at the case. I mean, it's easy to say, yeah, we support solar. Well, you gotta show it. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can just say you support. So we asked for information and we were presented it.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask you a question about your interpretation of that chart? This dialogue might be helpful. I have a follow-up for you there, if that's okay.
We'll come around to you, but there's a line of people waiting. Councilor Stewart-Morales.
But you pointed to that agreement, and it just might make sense for the committee.
So I think I've been recognized.
Well, you'll have a chance to ask them in a little while. Councilor Stewart-Morales.
This is very frustrating. I'm sorry, but when we speak, we just show that we don't know enough we don't know enough about how renewable energy works. We don't know enough about PPAs. We don't know enough about tax credits. And that's why we have to depend on the people that are advising us here. The tax credits, whether or not they come to be or not, it doesn't matter to the taxpayers of Framingham under this contract because we're locked in at a price at the beginning. We're locked in at a price that reflects savings that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to get if there weren't tax benefits to be expected. So that's the whole beauty of this contract, is that we're locked into a price that reflects that somebody's got tax credit benefits for this. If they don't get them for whatever reason, if let's say their business, if for whatever tax reason they're not able to monetize their tax benefits, there's zero impact to Framingham residents because we are locked in for 20 years on a fixed price that's beneficial to us. That's half of what I pay on my own bill. So when we speak about these issues, what it's showing to me is that there's a disconnect between the information that's been provided, which has been very thorough. It's talked about how tax credits work in the PPA. It's talked about the power options program that we're signing up for. We have recommendations again from all of the environmental communities in Framingham. Everybody's supporting this. I'm sorry, but we're not going to be the experts on every subject. And so this is an opportunity where we need to show a little deference to the people that actually know what they're talking about. That would be the sustainability coordinator. That would be a lot of the people that emailed us. And I counted again, there's 37 emails to the full city council through today in 5 days. Okay, these are factual statements. What isn't factual, also every resident that's on the call tonight that has access to the meeting materials can see that the memo from the mayor to the city council is dated December 9th. We had it on our agenda in 2 meetings in December that were postponed. So January 5th is just when we finally got around to having a meeting on it. It's not it's not a date. It's not any other important date, Ms. Leombruno. That's just the first time we met on it. But we've had this information since early December. We've had a chance to ask the questions that are great, fine, legitimate questions. And Mr. Lowe's has provided the answers. He's shown us that if we purchase panels, we would only save $69,000 over the life of this contract. If we do this, we save closer to $100,000. All of the worries that you've asked about have been addressed. It's ridiculous to ask them to go back to the beginning of a process because you don't understand the fundamentals on this deal. So I'm sorry, and I don't mean to be offensive, but the things that I've been hearing from you is that I'm saying that this is a political issue, that I'm saying that you're anti-solar. I never said that. What I said is we have a contract. We have a memo dated December 9th. I know that we've had this on at least 2 meetings agendas before January 5th that we postponed. So we've had time to look at this if we really wanted to. I really care about this issue, so I've looked at it. And what I did this week was say to people, hey, we have this topic up for discussion for the 3rd time on the Finance Subcommittee. It's not going anywhere because, for a variety of reasons, but it's not going anywhere. And this is an easy project. This is, as one of the residents that spoke about at public participation, when we had our sustainability forum during the election season, I want to say at least, Janet and George, I think they both said, on these issues, we don't know, and we're gonna listen to the people. We're gonna listen to the residents and the experts. And I think that George said, to the speaker's point, that we need to look at projects where there's a win-win situation. It doesn't get better than this. We're not spending any money, and we're getting $100,000 in utility cost savings for 20 years. This is the win-win situation. This is the low-hanging fruit. This is not asking us to invest $1 million because we want to make the environment better. This is saying, let's save money and make the environment better at the same time. So I make a motion that we refer favorably to the City Council, that we, I'm sorry, I'll start over. I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of this contract to the City Council.
Thank you. I will second that for the purpose of discussion. All right, why don't we'll do another round of councilors, and then I can see there's one member of the public who'd like to chime in. Councilor King.
I'll be brief. I appreciate, City, your comments, but I think where you are struggling to maybe understand is that it does matter to some extent whether we get the tax credits. Because maybe we could get twice as good a deal. That's the part that I think we want to understand. So yeah, you're saying it's locked in and it doesn't matter. You're right, to the extent that we have what we have. But I think what my feeling is, is that the due diligence and the process has been looked at enough to assure that's the best deal going. That's all. That's all we want to do. So I do find it frustrating that we can't have 2 weeks or 3 weeks, to look and discuss this, and somehow it's anti-solar. You say you didn't say that, but you implied it, okay? And you still implied it by shaking your head and stuff like that, because it's like, unless we agree with this tonight, we're anti-solar. Whereas what happens if we come back in 2 weeks and end up with a better contract by $50,000? Then are we pro-solar and also good finance people? I don't know. I think so. So I just don't get, and you mentioned the December 9th, but yeah, you're right. There are a couple of meetings that were canceled. So what can we do about that? Just the way it goes. So, different things came up. I don't even remember what the whole issue was. I think one of them was the meeting in the Christmas holiday week, and that's the way it goes occasionally. But if Mr. Keyser had put this back on the agenda in September when he first brought it up to me, then we would be all set by now. The panels would be being, on the roof. But I don't think it's burdensome to go an extra short period of time to make sure we get the best deal going. And and if it is, then I think that we don't see ourselves. It's not micromanaging; it's doing our job. So I don't see how making sure we're getting a good deal is not doing our job, or at least doing due diligence to try to make sure we're getting a good deal.
Thank you, and thank you to all the councilors for having a good, respectful conversation here. I did want to remind members of the public, please don't use the chat because it's not saved as part of the record. But you're welcome to raise your hand, and we will get back to public comment. Councilor Leombruno and then Councilor Cannon.
So George basically said what I was thinking. I do think that, we're talking about words here. December, yeah, it was in December, but we didn't have it in front of us. So it's not really fair to tell people that we didn't do it in December during, the holiday, whenever it was bumped off of the agenda or was pushed. We didn't get this until the middle of January. So we haven't been bouncing this back and forth and stalling on it. And I just don't think it's fair to let people think that we are, because then you're putting us against, our constituents that are out there. And that's not true. And I did talk about this. I've been talking about this on town meeting, 20 years ago. We talked about it. 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 6 years ago. Like all we do is talk about it. With the urgencies right now. So all of a sudden, if we don't do this in 2 meetings, we're anti-solar, or that we're, now's the time and we're getting in the way of it. We're already in the way of it. We are one of the, you look at communities around us. I mean, electric cars, how many in our fleet? Look at the things that we see in other communities around us. We're way behind. So why the urgency today, where we're just asking for, we say the word due diligence, but we're the finance team, and this is a 20-year contract. It's not something that and we can be made to feel like we're stupid. But I just think that if we don't ask these questions, I wish we asked more questions around budget and other important times. Which we don't sometimes, unfortunately, but it's very frustrating because we all want this. And I'm not saying that this has to be perfect. And I just don't think that saying we don't understand this, that, to fluff it off, that, only if we could understand it, then we would understand where you're coming from. We all want this. It's just that if this is the best, I would like to have the information to show me that we've seen others, and this is, the best that we're going to get. And if it's 50,000, which I still don't even know if it's 50,000 or if it's 100,000, because I guess I'm sorry, Sean, I know you explained that with the 49,000, the decommissioning, but I always thought we were going to say 50 over 20 years. And I'm still not even clear on those numbers. And, but I won't apologize for doing what we have to do as a finance committee. We can't rubber stamp the mayor's office. And I really wish that the mayor's office and the mayor would work with us. And, we operate in 2 different, I feel like we're in one city and, she's in another. And I'm sorry, but that's just how I feel with this. And I think that we've had many opportunities for conversations where we could work together and collaborate with the mayor and the city council. Unfortunately, we don't do that in Framingham. And it's kind of too bad, because I think that the city loses really with the lack of collaborating, communicating, working together. I think we'd get better products. I think we'd get better government. But unfortunately, we're who we are. And so anyway, that's just my thoughts on that. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Cannon.
Yes, I hope we can move forward with a meaningful commitment to be respectful, because when people say things like, you show your lack of knowledge by the questions that you ask, I just don't know that helps us serve the public because, and I'll apologize to Councilor Stuart Morales because I'm just, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I'm not a CPA like you. I don't speak 5 languages like you. And I don't have a doctorate like Dr. Steiner. So I have to work harder to understand things like this that probably come very easy to you. So I'll apologize if I ask a lot of questions. But to get back to the memo that seems to be filling you with confidence, and I'm just not there yet. When you're comparing the two numbers, if we do this, we save this, and if we do this, we save far less. Well, you have to drill down and see what the sources of those numbers are, and you have to question the veracity there. So much of that savings is based on industry white papers and broad projections and hypotheticals. What we haven't done is talk to a handful of solar companies in 2020. I won't even say 2021 to see, well, what's the best deal we can get or what's a good deal we can get for a PPA versus purchasing the system. They've solved a lot of these questions, but there are still references to tax credits and incentives here that we've kind of put to bed tonight. And you'll recall in our last meeting, the first meeting we had on this, tax incentives were a big part of the conversation. And now we've kind of figured out through this process that, well, maybe eventually if there's some sort of benefit, it'll apply, but it doesn't apply the way that in the last meeting it was understood. So we've learned a lot through the questions that we've asked, and I'm glad we've asked the questions. And I agree with Councilor Leombruno. I wish we asked more. And Councilor Stuart Morales, I admire and appreciate your passion and your urgency. I wish we could see that urgency in some of the other things that we're working on. If we could share that urgency on ADA compliance and others, I think we'd be in great shape as a community. So let's all try to be urgent and have more urgency in the matters that we have. But what we don't have, the source of this data is basically from the folks that are trying to sell us the other agreement. A PPA is more profitable for the solar developer than if we bought the system. That's fine. And we're going back to the salesperson at the car dealership to tell us why what they've recommended is such a good deal. We're not shopping around even a little bit. I just wish we could, continue this for a couple of weeks to allow the administration to get a fresh insight into the current marketplace. This was a vendor that was chosen, by, the better part of a decade ago now at this point. I don't know what I know the market has changed. I don't know how it has. But it really seems like, maybe some fresh eyes could make us all feel better about this. And I wish we would not confuse the passion that the community and we all have for solar as justification for not vetting a contract that comes before the Finance Subcommittee, because we have to ask tough questions about things that we love. I wish we didn't have to drill down on things like public health nurses and teachers and all of the wonderful firefighters and police officers. We have to ask tough questions about things that we're all passionate about, and to just rush this through is just not that's not the fun part of being a city councilor. But if you're going to serve on the Finance Subcommittee, you have to take a beat and do the due diligence that's necessary. So I would encourage Councilor Stuart Morales, respectfully, withdraw the motion and replace it with a motion that extends the opportunity and I'll support this motion. Withdraw and replace it with a motion that extends the administration to take however much time you think is appropriate. A few weeks is fine, probably, to get a fresh insight and perspective into the current marketplace. Let's look at new numbers, have them come back with a recommendation, and let's see what today's market says we should move forward with. And then I think we can all move forward with a unanimous vote out of the City Council with the Finance Subcommittee, and probably a unanimous vote from the full City Council. And then going forward, what I think that I'd like to see the administration come before the full City Council separately, and so I can get a sense of, and we can all get a sense of, well, what's the long-term plan for solar? We're years and years behind. I remember those conversations on the floor of town meeting about solar. But what's our plan to move this forward quickly? Because these questions, if they're not answered tonight, are just going to haunt us. So, Mr. Stuart Morales, will you withdraw and replace the motion to give the administration a little more time?
I just don't agree, Councilor Ken. I don't agree that we need to delay this for a few more weeks, because I think what you're saying is that you basically want us to go back to square one and go and do an RFP process and get a quote from a commercial from another commercial outfit on this. And I don't think it's fair to put the work that's been done on this by many people, but the sustainability coordinator in particular, to ask them to go back to square one. And I think a lot of it is just because of, this is something new to us. So I think I maybe, Mr. Chair, if we could hear what some of the three people that have their hands raised want to say about this, I think it might be helpful, because I'm sorry, but no, I don't understand. I think the other thing I would support is if we want to send this back to the council, so that and if you have specific questions, new ones that haven't yet been addressed, we're going to have an opportunity for the full council to chime in and for the community to chime in once again on this issue there. This isn't going very far here, and we need to, I don't know, we just need to move it forward. We have had this since early December, and we have had the opportunity to ask questions. Just because we didn't have the formal meeting doesn't mean we didn't have the materials. I mean, they were posted. I was prepared to talk about this at the first meeting that got delayed, and then the next meeting that got delayed. So that's just our basic responsibilities as counselors. So if, Mr. Chair, I think if we can go to the public, and there's 4 people that have their hand raised.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I had asked a question of Councilor Stewart Morales. I had asked a question of Councilor Stewart Morales. He said no. I was trying to extend the olive branch so we could allow some further collaboration, so the administration could perhaps reflect on the matters that have been brought up and revisited. I respect the fact that he won't withdraw his motion. Why don't we move the question, vote, and perhaps there's an alternate motion that we can vote on forward. And certainly, of course, will allow plenty of time for public comment.
Yeah, we will. We're going to do that right now. But Mr. Luce's hand has been up, so I'm sure.
Can I just clarify something that?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm not asking Mr. Luce to go back and start from square one. I think Sean has done a phenomenal job. It is not Sean's job to negotiate legal language and contracts, to negotiate the specifics and rates. We've got a city solicitor, senior attorneys, chief procurement officer, chief financial officer, chief operating. We got a lot of people that we pay a fair amount of money to do this. Sean's done his piece. And I certainly would hope that he would be involved if we go back and just get a sense of what the market is like today, and what the competitive landscape is today. But this isn't Sean's job to negotiate the numbers. Sean's the good guy. I want our attorneys and our finance people and our procurement people to be the bad guy, to make sure that we get the best return for the people of Framingham. We'll have 20 years to live with this. And if we go through this process now that just hasn't been done, we'll learn more, so we're better equipped to do more solar projects sooner. So just to clarify what my request when asking Councilor Stewart Morales to withdraw and replace his motion, but certainly, move the question on that motion if you feel appropriate, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate the opportunity to clarify my remarks.
Thank you. Mr. Luce?
Thank you, Councilor Steiner. I just wanted to reiterate from a prior meeting as well that I think, all members of the municipal team that I've worked with have been extremely important in this whole process. A lot of this is, a lot of this has been a collaborative effort to get everything together. I definitely, appreciate the sentiment, but this has definitely been, a team effort. And just want to reiterate my thanks. I wanted to just provide a couple clarifying points. Regarding the sources of data for a lot of the estimates that are in here, we drew from a variety of sources. We utilized 2 Massachusetts solar developers. I utilized data from the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. We even reached out to our insurance agency, North Star Insurance. We utilized utility bill data, and then, of course, incorporating data from the Select Power Purchase Agreement. We wanted to make sure that the estimates that we provided, were accurate, and they were representative of cost. Either cost we would have to take on if in the case of a power outright purchase situation, or in terms of modeling the power purchase agreement. We wanted to provide additional detail about how we came to things like the annual energy price increases that we assumed over the 20 years of the agreement that would affect the savings. And I just want to add that those values weren't just kind of taken haphazardly from places. We were pretty careful about where we chose those from, because we wanted it to be representative of what the situation would be. And then in addition, there's been a lot of discussion about when the solar energy system was brought up, and it definitely was towards the end of 2020 that the agreements were ready and that this was ready to go on the agenda. I did want to highlight that we have been in communication with the Environment and Sustainability Subcommittee in presenting just an overview of municipal properties and what we've been looking at in terms of renewable energy and other initiatives at those sites over time. And then in addition, in June of last year, after the school committee had approved, it was actually I believe it was the easement for the Brophy Elementary School. We were also looking at the solar energy systems for the schools. These projects, the schools and the McAuliffe Library, were brought up to the City Council at that point too. So that's not to say, at that point the agreements weren't ready. These projects have been in development for a while. But I just wanted to add those clarifying points. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one other clarifying question, and then we do have some people who've been waiting. Does this agreement obligate us if we were to, develop another solar project on a different city building, or even over a city parking lot? Are we obligated to use the same contract to extend to those properties, or would we go through the process again?
Great question. There's nothing that would prevent us from utilizing another option or going any other way. I think, with a lot of our municipal facilities and as discussed in that overview of municipal properties and, different renewable energy projects that we were looking at for them, there's a lot of challenges we have at a lot of our other municipal facilities. And I think specifically with this option, this is one of our newer facilities. In addition to the other two school projects we're looking at that are coinciding with development projects. In the case of Fuller, that's the construction of a brand new school, and then in the case of Brophy, that would be a canopy over a parking lot that's being significantly redone with all new stormwater. So this was strategic in the sense that we were looking at facilities that were ready. It was the right timing for them, it definitely doesn't. I would say it doesn't set us in stone in terms of, every other solar project in the city, we would have to do this way. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Sullivan, you're recognized for up to 2 minutes.
Hi, Brian Sullivan, District 4. I didn't call in tonight because I'm here for the environment. I could care less what your opinion is of it. If you told me solar kilowatts were twice the cost, I'd say no. I'm here because I've watched this meeting, I've watched your last meeting. And when I've looked at the numbers, we're talking about $100,000 in savings over 20 years. That's about $5,000 a year. $5,000 out of a $300 million budget is 1/10,000th of the budget. This is what you're talking about, 1/10,000th of the budget. It's a small project, there's small risk, there's some small cost savings. McAuliffe, to me, has a weird roof. I would rather not get into the solar panel maintenance business right now. I think we got enough problems to deal with for Framingham. I definitely think we should just look at the fact of this is a trial balloon. Let's try it. I think continuing to go out and trying to get more pricing or anything else is just burning our employee time and burning whatever savings we'll get. So at this point, I really would just suggest, I think you should just move it along. I think all you're doing is burning expensive employee time. I see at least 6 or 7 employees on this call. I saw the same ones on last week, or the 126 meeting when you had that. A much bigger project, a solar farm or something like that, put it back out for bid again. But I think at this point, you're getting into diminishing returns with this. So thanks for giving the 2 cents.
Thank you. Mrs. Finstein.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Chairman Steiner. I want to echo what Mr. Sullivan just said, and also just, I think, celebrate and salute, if you will, the city employees who've clearly brought such mastery and background to this conversation. I should have started that. I'm sorry. I'm a District 5 resident and a member of Sustainable Framingham and somebody who works in an affiliated industry here. And I started to put in the chat, but was corrected that I shouldn't put in the chat. So I will say here that the good news here is that this is absolutely the standard process for municipal procurement for solar power in this context. And the sustainability officer has provided great information in the packet here that really spells out the nuts and bolts of the finances as well as the legal parameters. And I think that Mr. Sullivan's comment is really well taken also, that the savings here are significant. $100,000 feels like a lot of money. At the same time, it's small relative to everything in the city. Finally, a word on some of the phraseology that I know people were concerned about earlier, but it seems like I think that has been assuaged. In terms of the tax credits, just to reiterate what I think others have said, that tax credits in this context are built into the way solar procurement companies work. So there would never be a contract that would spell out, we get a tax benefit and therefore we pass it on to you in our pricing. That's just fundamentally how they work. I understand why that maybe doesn't feel immediately clear. And finally, there's no possible way that the city can get tax credits here in terms of solar. It's just the city's not eligible for it. So just on all of those different elements, I just want to applaud the work that the city staff have done and bring this to the table. I think it's a sound project, and I hope that you all will support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Powalko.
Thank you, Chair Steiner. So first of all, City Councilors, I wanted to thank all of you for saying you support solar. You've said that in the past. You're saying that here. We wholeheartedly appreciate that. I also want to thank the state and say how incredibly fortunate we are in Massachusetts that municipalities that want to take action for clean energy, either through energy efficiency or renewable energy, they've been supported by our state. They're supported by the legislature to create mechanisms to allow easier procurement. So I worked for nearly 6 years with the Green Communities Division of the State Energy Office. All we did was help municipalities with their clean energy work. That was our full-time job of our division. And I can't tell you how grateful so many municipalities were for making their lives a little bit easier with these procurement processes, special things put in place for energy efficiency projects and for power purchase agreements. So we're following the same PPA process that many, many other projects have done in many, many other cities and towns. And we've said we want to be like them. We want to have solar. We want to catch up. So let's leverage their experience, the collective experience and expertise of our city employees, our state employees on these processes. Let's just move this project forward, and then we can start to think about solar on the rest of our public facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I don't see anybody else from the public. Any other councilor comments? Councilor Cannon.
Yeah, just to clarify, the risk is there. There's $200,000 plus early termination fee if we decide that we've made a mistake. And that's something that you see standard in commercial and residential agreements. But for municipality, if we leveraged our standing as a standalone government entity rather than as part of a consortium that includes other nonprofit organizations, et cetera, I just think we could probably get more terms, better terms. Everybody's on board with solar, everybody. But this proposal just hasn't been vetted. We haven't had a process. And these solar companies are aching to do business with us. They will move quickly. It'll be the government entity that moves slower than the people who want to provide a sales solution to Framingham. But a lot of this information, which I'm hearing carefully spells it out, is based on the folks that are trying to sell us something else. A different, a PPA versus ownership, because it's more profitable for them. Talk to a couple people, talk to 3 vendors. It doesn't have to be a formal 90-day thing. We can design, the administration can have a process, but don't have the lack of a process that's been happening now. So we can proudly move forward with solar. And I think these are important questions because they will in many ways drive how we do this in the future. So I wish we could allow the administration time until at least the next meeting or a couple of weeks to talk to a few more vendors, feel a little bit better, so we could have some consensus as not just folks that want to be proud stewards of our collective ecology, but as members of the Finance Subcommittee. Because if this were any other topic, to just say, well, we just got to move forward, and it's good enough, and we just wouldn't be doing our job. And that's the same thing here right now. So I guess we moved the question, and then depending on how that goes, maybe there's another motion that will extend the administration a couple more weeks to do this. We've been waiting 3 years, but to rely on such old data that is incomplete and from one vendor, maybe this is the best deal. Maybe we stumbled on it first, and that's great, and I'll be delighted if that's the case. But maybe there's a better solution out there that we haven't found because we haven't talked to another vendor yet. So,
thank you.
It's been a discussion.
Mr. Luce's hand's raised, and then Mr. Stout, I saw your hand waving a few times there.
I just wanted to provide a clarifying remark, and I don't think, Councilor Cannon, I apologize, I don't think this is what you were getting at, but I just wanted to make sure, and regarding the data in the memo, that came from a variety of sources, not just one solar developer. We took that as, so I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Which data are you referring to, Sean? The system decommissioning?
No, the whole. So if you look on the right side of the that table,
So the ones that say estimates from solar developers.
Well, there's also the ones that say Mass CEC median installed cost for the installed solar system, NREL insuring solar photovoltaics paper, North Star Insurance.
Right.
So we did our due diligence to look at a variety of sources and try to incorporate that into our analysis.
I appreciate that you brought that up. Can I just ask one clarifying question based on what you shared? The estimates from solar developers, it says $249,320 an outright purchase. Are those estimates from solar developers on government installations or just all installations based on the size?
I apologize. I don't know if I'm recognized.
Yes, you can go ahead.
Sure. So that's based on government installations because that's incorporating prevailing wage.
Okay, so there's no residential, there's no commercial in there.
No, that was specifically regarding government projects for it. So the assumptions regarding it were the system size.
Yeah.
That it was a rooftop system, it was behind the meter, and that it was a government installation.
Okay. And the ones that say estimates from solar developers like operation and maintenance, system decommissioning, how did those, just give me the same sort of insight.
Sure. So what were they decommissioning? What was the other one that you had mentioned?
The one right above it. They both have the operations and maintenance. They both say estimates from solar developers.
So those were the costs that, when we had reached out to get that information, those were the costs that they would have carried for the solar energy systems. I think, an important thing to note is that's based on their estimates. If, as a municipality, we're not like a larger solar company. I don't know if those values, I would think those values might be slightly more as a municipality going to get, those services on our own, as opposed to a solar company that has those built relationships with developers. I think depending on how it's purchased outright, that might not have an impact, but that's based on their estimates of, what they.
And then I guess my last question is, so if we talk to multiple solar developers to get that data, why did we not just get a proposal from, it looks like they provided us some data to provide, they did some work to provide you that data. Why did the administration, not you, Sean, but why did, we as the city, if we're talking to them about estimates like that, why did we not just get a proposal from them? And maybe that's a question for Ms. Pratt, the Chief Procurement Officer.
Could I answer that?
Of course.
Okay. So I think the reason that we, that wasn't something, we're looking for, especially at this point, I think that would take a little bit more time to get something of a value that we would feel confident that that's the value it's going to be. Over time, it took a while to get this project to a point where, we were comfortable to present it to you, to have the agreement ready. And there were quite a few changes that occurred over time. So for instance, one of them was how the solar panels were situated on the rooftop. We found over time, after it went through structural review, which is a cost that the solar developer has taken on, to assess that. we found that we needed to make changes to the design, which means that there were changes to the PPA, like the cost underlying the PPA, which means that there were cost changes to the overall PPA pricing. And so, going out and just, giving a short time period and saying, hey, like, here's the building, we want a solar energy system on it. They first of all, they might not be able to incorporate all of the data that they need to get an accurate representation of what they could do for a PPA price for us. But then on top of that, until you start investing resources into analyzing the facility and like what it can support for, rooftop loads and things like that, there may be costs that come up that end up affecting either the outright purchase price or PPA price the further you get into it. So if we just got an upfront cost that might, not be representative of what the ultimate cost will be in the end after, really diving into things.
Right. And I appreciate the insight. What I'm finding in 2020 and 2021 is that these solar companies are very eager to do business with stable customers. Commercial entities are not as stable as they once were, so we're an even more attractive candidate. And their technology has gotten so much better than it was in 2015. If you wanted solar for your home in 2015, it was an entire process. Now you've got people walking around with iPads that are using widely available data. And it sounds like the hardest part of the process that you've referenced has already been done. So certainly these other companies can take that data. They seem to be able to move very quickly with other companies. I just am puzzled why we've chosen not to get an actual quote from some of the ones that we've talked to on this. And that's really just more of a puzzling question. And I have to drop off. My mom is just out of surgery and they won't let me in the hospital and I have to take this call. So I apologize for dropping off right now.
That's all right.
I'll be back.
Take care. All right. Mr. Luce and then Mr. Stone, I didn't forget about you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I apologize that that he's currently not available, but I did want to respond to a couple of those points. I think that it's not as simple as going out and getting a quote for one facility like this. I think one of the advantages of utilizing power options is that it is a valid procurement method that we can utilize to secure pricing for the system and then be able to act on it. And then in the case of, even the McAuliffe Library, but also looking at other projects that we've discussed at the schools that, we're also working on, there are a lot of different things that can happen when you're evaluating a solar project that only come up after you invest resources. And, a good example is, we're looking at the new Fuller Middle School, and we were planning to have solar on both of the parking lots, the one to the east and west of the facility. And, we had to basically cut off half the system size because of poor geotechnical analysis results on the western lot. And, originally when we were getting proposals, we were just investigating, like, what can we do for this? What are our options? What are the different developers? And, looking into power options. We were getting pricing for both lots, and, there wasn't a lot of interest to start investing resources to determine for sure, which aspects of the site were eligible to have solar. We wouldn't know until we had that geotechnical analysis done that, half the site wasn't eligible, which, as you can imagine, significantly increased our PPA rate. Compared to, like, if we were to be able to do the whole site. So I guess just in summary, I think there are a lot of different components that could affect the PPA price that can't immediately be picked up until you've started looking into the site. And I don't know, I would think that's bad form to, just start taking resources and kind of just shift that to another developer to try to price that out, especially if it's not an option that, we could go with unless we did our own procurement and then had to evaluate all the responses on our own and, utilize additional resources to evaluate, which would be the best vendor and manage that process.
Thank you.
If I could just follow up on what he said, I caught most of it. And thank you, Mr. Luce. My mom is doing great. She is enjoying the medication that they've given her, and she's going to sleep now. And dear God, I hope we can get back into a world when we can be with our loved ones when they're in the hospital, because today has sucked, but she's in good hands. Sean, I heard your comment about Fuller. It's a difficult comparison because on a structure that doesn't exist yet, it's really hard for them to figure out what everything is going to look like. This is a building the library is a building that's been up since I think 2014. So it's accessible, it's easy, there's overhead data, there's sun exposure data. I just think bringing in Fuller into the conversation doesn't help us. Listen, I would feel so much more comfortable if the administration could run with the work that Sean has done, talk to 3 vendors of your choosing and get a quote for a PPA and purchase. If this deal happens to be the best deal, fine, great. Let's move forward quickly and let's start working on the next one. If we find that the current marketplace, which I think will provide us with more favorable terms just because everyone is desperate for business everywhere, great, even better for Framingham and even better for our taxpayers and the work that we've done and the conversations we've had will certainly have paid off. I think that's the logical next step because as we drill deeper, we're finding that there are more questions than answers. And we would do this for any other type of procurement, really. Talk to 3, come back to us. I guarantee these solar companies can move quickly. Figure out if you want us to design a process, okay. I don't think that's necessary. I don't think you want that, but talk to 3 companies and get, we have a chief procurement officer. Let's have her talk to 3 companies and get a PPA proposal and an outright purchase proposal and come back to us and say, this is what we're going with, or ultimately maybe the deal that we've presented you is the best deal going and we can feel good about that and do it. I mean, if you tell these solar companies that you've got 2 weeks to do this, they'll comply.
Thank you. Mr. Stote, and then we'll go to Councilor Stuart Morales.
I'm listening to this. You have a bunch of experts telling you that this is the way to go. And then I'm hearing that we need to go back and talk to other companies and see what they're going. What's the approximate length of time that would require to start, say, even in the middle, if now we have some information? How long would that take for an individual company? Estimate.
Are you, well, why don't you finish making your comments and then I'll allow
my comment
people to
is
respond.
If we decide to go back to putting this out for getting more bids, quote unquote, I have no idea what length of time that is. But I will tell you, all the experts at this point are saying you should move forward with this. It's a standard procedure. We're going to save money for the taxpayers, and the city council has control over this happening. So why don't we put this? I support Mr. Stuart Morales's thing. Let's take it back to the city council and let the city council decide.
Thank you. So, Mr. Luce, do you have any idea if tomorrow we're going to reach out to some solar vendors to get estimates, how much of your time and then space of time before they would actually be able to provide a proposal?
I think that's something I'd have to check with procurement on and make sure, we utilize the right process. Like I said, I mean, we can ask for pricing just based on the system size and location, but there might be things that don't come up until they do an in-depth analysis about what the facility can hold and support and how the solar system might have to change because of that, which, happened in this case. So, we would get pricing based on the simplest situation when it might not be compatible with what the actual situation is at the McAuliffe. So I'd have to check in on that. I apologize. I don't have the answer up front. The one thing I just do want to mention, and I mentioned it at a prior, in a couple prior meetings, I believe, but, if we are going with a new solar company, there's also the chance that, we're going to lose out on the incentives we secured through Select to try to lock in our SMART program, which is the state incentive program. I am not 100% positive what that process is, if that could be transferred. But that's just kind of another aspect that makes it a little challenging, because then we would be entering into a different block of the program with lower incentives.
Thank you. Mr. Keyser?
Yeah, my response
and then Mr. Councilor Stuart Morales, sorry.
Yeah,
we're not going to do that, what's being suggested, because there are a finite number of collaboratives in Massachusetts. There are a finite number of vendors. If we're going to go out into the marketplace, and if we're going to develop a business reputation of taking the ball to the 1 yard line and then picking it up and walking off and going to someone else, it's not a good reputation for the city, and vendors are going to deem us as a risk, and that's going to be factored into the pricing of them doing the analysis. I mean, we have a rock solid process. The collaboration is well established. It stays current, has been established. We've done all the due diligence. Sean Luz and the rest of the folks have been working this all summer to get to the point where we have a good structured deal to go forward. But what I'm reluctant to do is to have Freeman just have one vendor invest a lot of investment and time into structuring a deal and just shopping around with that information to other vendors. That's not the way we want to do business. In the long run, that will cost us more money. So we have a proposal, a product that we delivered. We've responded to the question as to whether we should do our own procurement as compared to this collaborative. We've answered that question with a lot of good information. This is where we are. We're not going to just keep doing the circular arguing till there's no sun anymore. So we need to go forward.
Thank you. Councilor Stu Morales, and then I see other councilor hands up.
I think that, I think it's pretty clear that we've gotten to a point where on this issue, we need to make a recommendation, yes or no. If you're not comfortable recommending this project, then let's make a recommendation of no to the city council. But there's nothing new is going to happen between now and when we finally decide on this contract. The COO just said that request from Michael Cannon is a non-starter. So that means no, they're not going to do that. So if we're done and this is all the information we have, do you vote yes or do you vote no to recommend this contract? We need an answer. Unless we're going to ask for additional specific information, which there isn't any request on the table right now other than the one that we just said is a non-starter. The only reason to keep it in the subcommittee is not the only reason, but the only impact of keeping it in the subcommittee is that we don't make any progress. So I think that especially since we're not being asked to give a recommendation based on finances, we're being asked to approve an easement here. The contract has been, pretty much, it's been created. We have it. We can review it. We're being asked to approve an easement here. There is no real financial ask for us. I think we've done a good job asking financial questions. All of the information that we've asked has been provided. So I would be open. I would amend my motion to say, instead of recommending approval, that we refer this back to the city council for additional conversation. That will take, if I don't know if Councilor King can put it on the next agenda or if it's going to be the one after that, but that'll give us a week or two for councilors to go out and find out if this is really just as all of the experts are saying that this is a project that we should recommend and that we should move forward on. There's no benefit in keeping this in the subcommittee any longer. So if it's acceptable to you, Councilor Steiner, because you seconded my initial motion, I would just amend that we refer this back to the city council for additional recommendation as opposed to an approval tonight, since it doesn't sound like the councilors are ready to approve.
Rookie mistake, I was muted. My preference would be that we, recommend favorable action, but if it seems like so far, at least the will of the subcommittee is not to do that, then yes, I'll agree to the change of the motion to just refer to the city council. And I agree with your overall argument. And so.
Thank you.
Councilor King.
So it's great that Mr. Keyes says we're not going to do it. But that's kind of what I was saying about an hour ago. It's like, take the ball and go home, my way or the highway. It's been pointed out that in other places, procurements have gotten better deals. So I don't understand why it's okay for the administration to play my way or the highway. Not that we're playing that. It's probably a bad analogy. But why it's okay for them to say that. Yeah, we can't ask a few questions. It just doesn't seem right. And it's not, well, it just doesn't seem right that's the case. And I totally disagree that what you said about bringing the business to the end. And then, unfortunately, and people who deal with municipalities know this, that's what municipalities, that's how we buy things as municipalities. We could have people compete against each other all the time. So we decided to give this one group an exclusive option and looked at no other groups. That was the decision we made. And that's the decision that's being questioned here. So, and as far as what Adam just said about, liking approval of this, I agree. I think it'd be much better, since we all want to see the solar happen in Framingham here in this relatively small project and in much, much bigger projects going forward. I think the best way to do that is to get a unanimous vote out of this committee. But it looks like that's going to take a little bit more information. I think we get there. I think Councilor Cannon said that too, because there's going to be an answer. It's either going to be, we can't do anything different, and then we're going to be all set, or it's going to be, yeah, we can do this, but let's get the answer. If we get the answer and it's not anything different, then fine, I'm for it. If we get the answer and it says, yes, this is a better deal, I'm even more for it, okay? But we're for it, so we can get the vote. But I don't think this idea of like, suddenly because you're on a subcommittee and you don't like where the subcommittee is going, that you try to hijack the subject out of the subcommittee. We can't do that. It's against our rules, and it's against everything that we processes that we do. Just because you want something, it's a little Trumpish here, to be honest with you. Just because you want something doesn't mean you automatically get it by making new rules right there. We'll stop counting the votes at 2:00 in the morning because I'm ahead. So we're going to stop the process here in the subcommittee because I like the results, so I want to go back to the city council. And who knows what will happen when it gets back there. So let's just find the information. It's a couple of weeks. If it's a 20-year project, it's not going to make that big of a difference. The administration had it 6 months. I really just don't understand why we have to stop counting the votes, because it really feels a lot like that scenario. Stop counting the votes because we're ahead.
You. I think that's an absolutely ridiculous comparison, with all due respect. First of all, we've had this in the subcommittee for many weeks, and I guess if I was in the shoes of Mr. Luz or the CFO or any of the city employees, why would they have any confidence if we scheduled this 2 weeks from now that they wouldn't come back here and there would be additional requests? Because at our last meeting, it was provide us a chart with a comparison of purchase versus the PPA, and they did that work. And now it's if folks had other concerns, they easily could have said, hey, by the way, I didn't bring it up in the meeting, but I would also like to see, could we go out and get some quotes from folks? But then we've heard that, those quotes wouldn't necessarily be accurate. And then we've heard from the administration that they're not willing to do that because it would be damaging to, the reputation of the city or our relationship with this vendor, which we hope to use for other projects because they're a leader in the field. So I don't understand how more time would be helpful. I do really worry that this subcommittee, is frustrating people who are working hard. I think it's very nice to use respectful language for Mr. Luce, which I think is well earned, but I think dragging him and other folks into these meetings and then asking for additional information when they were asked to provide something else originally doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then just finally, to the chair's point about the subcommittee, I mean, you constructed a subcommittee with 3 of the most conservative members of the council, and that are more conservative than the overall council. So we're going to be in this position, and I'm sure we're going to be in it through the budget process, where the majority of this subcommittee is going to feel one way that's going to be, vary greatly from the council as a whole. So, so it's just, I don't see any value in treading water. I do see it burning out our city employees for no good reason. And
point of personal privilege.
Yes.
I don't really understand why you're making comments like that now. You were talking earlier tonight about respect and things like that, and now you're accusing me of building a subcommittee that's more conservative than the entire council. Do we really want to talk about construction?
Well,
is that really something that's valuable here?
I'm sorry, I'm a little sensitive to being compared to the, the former president and the.
Well, maybe you are.
Attempted...
I wasn't comparing you to the former president. I was comparing the situation to feeling the same to me, and I think I'm entitled to my feelings. That it feels like the idea of stopping the counting the votes because I'm ahead. It feels like the same thing. Maybe it's not a perfect analogy. I'm telling you what it feels like to me. But the idea that over 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to hijack a subcommittee. We had stuff in the rules subcommittee that packaged for months. And no one was banging, on the table saying we have to get it out. Their process was respected. So the committee is what the committee is, okay? And it's going to be that way for 10 and a half more months, okay? And then someone else can have the option to construct anything they'd like to construct, okay? But whatever they're able to construct, put it that way. And I also think it's disrespectful to the entire council to compare first of all, compare this committee to the entire council, number one. But number two, you imply by your suggestion that somehow you believe this is going to pass the council, therefore probably by the proverbial 6-5 vote. And I don't think it's fair that you make that recommendation because I don't know how anybody else feels about it. And, frankly, and this is the last thing I'll say is I really did not want to get this deep into it tonight. I cannot believe it's 9:15. But, when I came in here, last time we talked about this, whether it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, I fully came in expecting to vote for it that night because I didn't, just because I did, okay, because I hadn't, but the situations were raised that I thought merited consideration. And I spent many years in the public sector. There's a lot of elected boards that suggest things be looked at that merit consideration, okay? And if you're a public employee and you feel like that's burning you out, it's time to move on. Okay, because I've been on both sides of that. I'm not saying any of these people feel that way. You said they feel that way. I don't think they feel that way. But they understand that this is what it is. We're an elected board. We have the right to ask questions. We have the right to have people do things, and I think we are, and this is the last thing I'll say. I know it's the last, I will. I think we underdo that, okay? I think we let an awful lot of things go by without that. So I hope we could talk about the issues and not about how we construct committees, because it's kind of like whatever that other analogy is about how things are made.
Yeah, I personally am frustrated. I think that, we're presented with information in advance, and it certainly makes sense to develop questions during a meeting and request additional information. And then frequently after a meeting, I think of something else and make a request that it be addressed in the next meeting. And I just feel like that work has been done. And, we're not enemies with the administration. We're supposed to be on the same side, in the election analogy. We're on the same team. And I just feel like when the whole team of professionals is saying A, I just, and you're not even necessarily, and I don't question whether people here support solar. I take everybody at their word at that, but I just think that it is counterproductive, and it damages the health of a city to constantly be micromanaging and Tuesday morning quarterbacking, especially around contracts. I mean, you can always, we've seen contracts before for, the police or, teachers or whoever, or, I know, and you can always find something you don't quite agree with. And I think there's ways that are constructive to address those. And there are ways that are, to me, just obstructionist. And the process that this subcommittee has gone on just seems obstructionist at this point. So, all right, let me have it. Councilor Leombruno.
I'm not going to let you have it, but I am going to say that I hear your frustrations, and I'm not even like being called conservative, like the three of us are conservative. I don't even, I think that I'm not even upset about that. I mean, I think that being on the finance committee is that we have to question everything because, I get it all the time. We all get it. Like, what idiot decided that? Well, where were you when we were putting it together at the finance committee? This is where everything kind of starts. So, maybe we weren't clear. I guess maybe I thought we were going to get, when I said a comparison, I did not think it was going to just be versus the buying it versus the, I guess maybe I should have asked for more of I should have been more descriptive of what I thought. I thought that was part of the deal, that we were going to get more companies. Like, I didn't know that usually you put out bids. Into, not to go around and around, I guess I just assumed that was something that we had done or we're going to get. And I just don't think, saying that, we're conservative is like a bad thing, because I think that overall, we're pretty progressive when it comes to, the solar and energy. And I think, I can't speak for everyone, but I think we have a pretty progressive thinking mindset on the council. I think that when it comes to the budget stuff and when it comes to the finance, though, I think that we have to really ask the tough questions. And if it comes off as that we're being obstructionists, I'm sorry if that's how we come off to some people, but I think to other people, they want us to ask the questions. And I think that, as to taking the ball off the 1 yard line, I'm surprised that a company would not then, why would we be a risk? Because I think every other community does their due diligence by, shopping around. And if they were so great, they'd want you to shop around. I mean, why wouldn't they? We know we're the best. Fine, get 3 quotes. We're good. We'll be here when you come back. Not, oh, well, we're going to take our ball and go home. I just don't know any companies that I would think that would operate that way. And especially in these COVID times, I would imagine that, with all of, the upheaval we're in right now with everything going on, and especially with a lot of, businesses being, going out of business. The government is the one thing that's, still in business. I would think that companies would be falling over each other to get a quote in, or to at least be considered. I don't know if it would be appropriate to make a motion at a proper time, but I would make a motion to ask respectfully for the procurement officer, I'm not sure who, would look at 2 other companies, or at least, however you would go about that, to come back within a time frame of, find out what would be acceptable, and just see if we could get some kind of a comparison if we are getting the best deal. And if we are, then we move forward. And I say we move forward quickly. But, and I understand the frustration that we've been dealing with in this now, whether we say it's the middle of December or end of December. And I understand that this has been in the mayor's office since back in the summer. So I wouldn't imagine that a couple more weeks would be a deal stopper. And I just don't, I don't want to be disrespectful to the time of Sean, who has been, amazing with all, coming back with anything we have for a question. But I agree too, some of this is, not in his hands. And, we have a lot of, higher ups on this call and have been on it. And I just would be hoping that we could just be able to feel like we're getting the best deal. And especially because many of us really believed that this was going to be the kind of the beginning, like this was the model, the pilot, so to speak. And if this isn't really a good deal, I wouldn't want that to get in the way of moving forward with future projects. So I guess I'll a roundabout make that motion. And I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but that's basically the gist of it.
Thank you.
Motion.
Thank you. Yeah, we can, we'll vote on their first motion and then we'll come back to that one if the first one fails. Councillor Cannon.
Yes, thank you, Sean. It occurs to me that I've heard your name pronounced a number of ways tonight, and I may have inadvertently said it multiple ways myself. Could you just remind me how you pronounce your last name?
Luz.
Luz.
Luz is okay too. That's the, I guess that's the authentic.
But when you introduce yourself to people, you say Luz?
Depends on the day. No, it's Luz.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Keyser, I'm really troubled by your comments about our procurement processes. And I think Councilor Leombruno and others have hit it on the head. I mean, if you're doing business and you're a serious purchaser, you're going to shop around. Are we telling our vendors that we're only showing this to you and when you're the one shot and we're not going to shop around to anybody else? Because I tell you, if someone thinks that they're the only, typically, if someone thinks that they're the only vendor being considered, their pricing is vastly different. Their offering is vastly different than if they know that it's going to be a competitive process. So your comments about how we're, I would like us to have a reputation for being a place where you have to sharpen your pencil. Framingham pays its bills on time. We buy a lot of stuff. We spend a lot of money, but I want our vendors to think, and prospective vendors, that, oh yeah, Framingham, you got to sharpen your pencil there. Not just the finance committee's not going to ask questions and try to get to a better deal. And as we move forward into a time in municipal economics where I think the toughest times are to come, the savings, it becomes even more important. So if a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, we find that, well, if we had asked a few more questions or engaged another vendor or two, we could have saved considerably more than the deal that's on the table, well, we will have failed. And we don't have a way of knowing if that's the case. And all of this can happen very quickly. So I don't think it's treading water to give the administration some time to engage a couple more vendors. And by the way, maybe that will motivate this vendor to sharpen their pencil. But I find it hard to believe. I'm just so puzzled at the resistance, because it's very easy for these companies to put these proposals together now. They don't have to redo a roof. It's a new structurally sound roof. It's a building that is in existence. It's a municipal customer, which is as low risk as it gets. Take a couple of weeks and let's see what we can do so we can have unanimous votes and move this forward and have a good and begin a good track record of finally building solar in our community. If we don't do this right, the risk is substantial. The dollars are more significant if something goes wrong. So why not take that opportunity to engage a couple of other vendors and just get some quotes? PPA versus ownership, your process. We've got folks on staff. I just think that the work is worthwhile. I'm not comfortable recommending this to the council because while we have gotten answers to the questions, we've also spent some time poking holes in some of that data. In the last meeting that we had, there was a lot of discussion about the tax credits that we'd received and the time sensitivity of those tax credits. Well, a number of them don't expire until the end of next year, but we've painfully uncovered that we don't have those benefits anyway. So we've drilled down on some data that wasn't 100% reliable. So I would support Councilor Leombruno's motion to afford the administration the opportunity. And I think at some point in the near future, us as the Finance Subcommittee should look at our procurement processes overall to see, just so we can learn more about it.
Can I respond?
We can move the question, Mr. Chairman, if there's a.
No, can I respond, Mr. Chairman?
You may, Mr. Keiser. I'm wondering in your response if there's, I think it's, it seems unlikely that this is going to just come flying out of the subcommittee. If there's, you're feeling some discomfort with sort of having a bidding process that's going to damage our relationship. If there's some middle ground you could possibly think of where we could get some comparison numbers without doing damage, if you can address that possibility.
Well, I was going to ask Mr. Cannon if he's ever attended the Inspector General's courses on procurement, because that's where you would get that information. There are a number of very legitimate procurement processes that can be followed depending on the product or service. You have Chapter 30B. You have Chapter 149 for construction, 3039M for vertical construction. You have, or horizontal construction. You have Chapter 7 selection design law. You have a number of those processes. You have collaborations, which in this case is how these are best done by municipalities, because it is a very complex process. And so the state set up a structure through these collaborations to help municipalities, as someone mentioned earlier, to do that process. So I'm not surprised you're taken by remarks, but I am concerned about our ability to do good business practices. The issue here is, the issue keeps coming up, that we've not done a procurement process. We've done a very legit process. We've done the comparison to a direct purchase ourselves. The other alternative would be to go through a number of the other collaboratives. It's the same process through the other collaboratives. They're just other collaboratives, other groups of people. So again, we're just expending resources that'll get us to the same result.
Mr. Keiser, though, what you've done, though, to be perfectly honest, and I appreciate your reference to what we're allowed to do. Yes, you've cited state law that allows us in this case to undertake any process we want, including the lack of a process, which really seems to be the case. You went to one vendor, got one offer, and went back to basically that one vendor.
We went through a collaboration who works with the industry to make the best deal for the members in the collaboration.
I'll ask you to remind Mr. Keiser that I have the floor. Mr. Keiser.
Actually, you spoke out of turn, so really neither of you two, but go ahead, Mr. Cannon, and I'll give you a chance to respond when he's finished.
Right. He addressed me specifically, so I was responding for Robert's rules, et cetera. Mr. Keiser, I just don't understand the resistance. But to tell that if you want to do business in Framingham, we're not going to shop around, I don't think is wise for, it benefits the taxpayer at all. If you had told me that we had talked to 3 vendors, we had talked to the collaborative, which sometimes those collaborations are great, but they're not always great. So we talked to the collaborative and we did our own research with a couple of other vendors, I'd be satisfied, but that hasn't been done. We're putting a lot of faith into a collaborative that serves nonprofit organizations, religious institutions, cultural icons, et cetera. But we haven't done the work ourselves. We're relying on everybody else to do the work. Usually when we decide, like when Ms. Kelly or Ms. Pratt decided to do insurance, not through is it the MIIA? I'm going to screw up the acronym.
MIIA.
Yeah.
MIIA.
When we did
Mass Interlocal Insurance Association. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Keiser. That collaborative was not the best deal for Framingham. And we knew that because we did our own internal process, unlike what has happened now, to decide that there is a better program for Framingham. We didn't do that important piece, which can be done quickly, to arrive at the conclusion that you're insisting is the right one now. Instead, we have the sales guy at the car dealership telling us why we have the best deal. And you telling the public and the world that we're not going to shop around for major 20-year agreements. So I'm just asking that let's shop around a little bit so we can feel good about this and vote unanimously. It is such a reasonable request.
Thank you. Mr. Keiser, did you want to respond? And then maybe we can wrap up this discussion.
No, because if I respond, then we'll have to have follow-on comments. We're circular. So I know Mary Ellen has probably some good information to add to this conversation. I'll leave it to her.
Thank you. Let's go to Councilor Stuart Morales, and then we'll go to Ms. Kelly.
Mr. Keiser has already told us that that's a non-starter. So Councilor Leombruno's motion is it's just going to be a waste of time. It's not going to happen. So knowing that, again, we have a responsibility to make a decision, yes or no. If you're not in support of this contract because you don't feel you have enough information, then vote no. If you need more specific information that hasn't already been supplied, then let that be known. And even if I don't know if Councilor Cannon missed it, but the current motion is not to recommend the contract, just to bring it back to the City Council for discussion. And so that will allow us another week or two for whoever has questions to send those directly to whoever it is you think might be able to provide an answer. But the only reason to keep it in this subcommittee one more time is to not act on it. And that's not the way that we should be doing business. The government process is long to begin with. Why are we as councilors, why aren't we using the flexibility that we have as councilors to make quick decisions? That was one of the benefits of becoming a city, is that we weren't going to have to go to town meeting. We're going to be in these smaller committees that can make quick decisions. This, whether we had a meeting or not, has been in our hands for far too long. The message that we're sending to the community that I'm hoping everybody's taking into consideration is whether or not we support sustainability initiatives in our city. And I think the message has to be a resounding yes. And so I really urge the councilors to vote to move this to the City Council, where on the 23rd or on the 2nd of March, or whenever the chair of the City Council decides, we can have this back on the agenda and talk about any final thoughts we have on it before we vote yes or no as a full City Council. I don't see the harm in that, and we're going to end up in the same place. If we move on Councilor Leombruno's suggested motion, we already know what the answer is going to be. It's going to be no, nothing. They're not giving us anything else. Let's move on this.
Thank you. Any other councilor comments? All right, we will vote first on Councilor Cannon. Did you have a final comment or?
Sentiment that I wish we didn't cower that way, because we don't get the answer that the administration doesn't want to do appropriate due diligence. So we accept that they're not going to do it, and we just vote on a bad deal or a possibly bad deal because we don't expect them to deliver. We have a fair amount of authority in the charter, and we don't exercise it formally very often, but we all work for the taxpayers. If to give them the opportunity to revisit the marketplace and talk to 2 or 3 other vendors, let's see what they come up with. I don't accept that, no, we're not going to do it, because I just think that that doesn't serve the taxpayers. And if that is too burdensome, you probably should reevaluate the priorities. But it's a reasonable request. And I talked to a lot of the people that emailed us, and so many of them were not aware that, I didn't realize that this was based on a vendor selection from 5+ years ago. I didn't realize that there weren't competing bids. I didn't realize that we hadn't thoroughly looked in a meaningful way at ownership versus PPA. I had heard that there's no cost up front, but I didn't realize that the savings can vary dramatically. And the times are getting tough, so we're going to need that savings. So I hope it's maximized. They kind of assumed that a lot of that work had been done. So when we discussed that it hadn't been, and it still hasn't been, it was a bit of a change of the conversation. The conversation in most of those cases turned into, well, I'm glad you guys are working on it. That's good. We're all on board for solar. That's the easy part. This is the hard part, and it's why we're elected.
Thank you.
I support Councilor Leombruno's efforts and motion to extend the administration the opportunity to revisit the marketplace. I'm not satisfied with, they say they're not going to do it, so I'm just going to vote for a bad deal. That's just lazy.
Well, I don't think it's I think Councilor Stuart Morales, is making just a practical argument that, we are going to meet again on February 9th, and by all accounts, we'll be in the exact same position we are right now. So why not send it to the council, and that, we would have 1 or 2 weeks to get that information if they are going to provide it. And then if they don't, then decide whether to vote it up or down, period.
And to them the opportunity to compare, to look into the marketplace now, which hasn't been done, and get 3 competing bids. And I'm picking that number out of the sky. If someone has a better idea for numbers, I'm fine.
Yeah, but I think they've made it clear that they're not going to do that, which is the issue. And so, and I feel like my, questions about this process have been answered really prior to this meeting, but, reinforced. And so, yeah, anyway, I think it's, it's been said. So, Councilor King, and then Ms. Kelly, I realize I owed you a comment at some point in there. So I'll see if you want to check in before we vote.
So I guess I just find it difficult that the administration decides they don't want any bids. We're going to take the only bid we have, and we're going to go forward with that. It's not an unreasonable request. And I don't think anybody's even asking for a formal bid process. People are asking for options instead of being told to take one thing. If the administration wants to take that position, then I don't see how we can finish our review of this issue, because there's nothing to review.
Thank you. Mr. Keiser?
Yeah, I mean, my point is, it's not that we don't want to do the work. The point is, we have done the work. We have done the analysis. We put a lot of work into this, and to say otherwise is misleading people. So my point is, we've already put a ton of work. We followed up with answering questions, and we will just be expending more valuable resources for a decision that you have all the information you need. And may I remind the council, I know it's been mentioned before, the matter that's before the council is approval of an easement, not the approval of the contract. The contract is an important component, it's backup information, but the matter to be decided by the council is to whether or not to allow an easement to place these panels on top of the building. That's what's before the council. Everything else is backup information for your benefit to make a good decision as to whether we should or should not allow solar panels on the roof of McAuliffe Library. That's a
disingenuous legal approach.
No, it's not disingenuous. It was approved by town meeting to allow a 20-year contract, and under the charter, as you well know, you were on the charter committee, that all powers that were given to the selectmen are transferred over to the mayor. So the city has the full authority to enter into a 20-year agreement on these matters. It is not an in run, it's not a loophole, it's authorized. If the city council decides it no longer wants to allow that power, you can go ahead and change the decision. But town meeting made that decision for the benefit of the community to allow the town at that time to enter into these arrangements in order to maximize benefit for the community. So it's not disingenuous. And you should know that as a member of the Charter Commission
thank you,
that
Mr.
transferred
Keiser,
that power.
Thank you, Mr. Keiser, but it's a little simplistic. It was not the intent in any way of a 2016 town meeting vote to authorize a 2021 mayor to do anything. So it's not in good faith. Maybe it's legal. Like I said, I'm not saying it's illegal. I'm saying it's not in good faith that we don't have this contract in front of us. It's purposely to avoid us.
Oh, so you're saying we acted in bad faith? You had 3 years to change it before now. To use your phrase against us, you had 3 years to bring this matter up and change the ordinance.
All I'm saying is if that ordinance, it's not even an ordinance, it is a motion. If that authorization had not been given, and I said I agree that its legal interpretation is accurate, most likely, but what I'm saying is our role is to approve 20-year contracts, and this is an attempt 3.5 years after we were into an existence not to have us approve a 20-year contract. Okay, that's the issue I'm trying to say. And
because it's legally authorized by town meeting.
But that's for the
and if that didn't exist, we would have brought it
the contract and the easement to the council as we've done with other contracts.
Okay, I'll withdraw my bad faith, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'd say it's the easy way out.
Well, it doesn't seem like they're able to just slip this through anyway, so.
Well, right, that's the point, right?
It's kind of
But that's why he's making it sound right, but you're 100% right. So we're using what we have, right? You're correct, no question.
I see the city solicitor and then Councilor Cannon.
Yeah, just briefly, I think this has already been addressed, but Article 9, Section 1 of the Charter expressly states all general laws, special laws, town bylaws, town meeting votes, and rules and regulations remain in full force and effect. But I think that's been acknowledged. So,
thank you, Councilor Cannon.
Yes, I'm just reflecting on our many late nights at town meeting and thinking of if town meeting was presented with a 20-year deal where only one vendor was queried, and if they had been told that, well, we don't want to develop the reputation, et cetera, as I said earlier, town meeting would have had a very fruitful conversation. And I can't fathom that town meeting ever expected that this 20-year contract that was hypothetical at the time would not have been properly vetted. These questions and more would have come up by, I can think of a dozen town meeting members off the top of my head, and I miss them. But it wasn't a license to not do a careful vetting of a 20-year agreement. That's not what that vote was for. It was a vote of confidence that you would exercise and undertake the same responsibility and careful thought and thoughtfulness that town meeting would have when moving into a solar agreement of 20 years. This hasn't been done. What we're asking is reasonable. Talk to 3 vendors in 2021, post-COVID, in the current economic climate, and let's see if we can find a better deal for the taxpayers. Because if we find out a year from now that we could have saved a lot more, and things like this do tend to bite us, not taking those extra couple of weeks, we just look silly. It's like the decisions that we wish we now, knowing what we now know, we wish probably had been carried out in a different way from the spring, because the economic climate was much more challenging than we anticipated. So I hope we learn from the spring, and let's take a couple of extra weeks and look at the marketplace, talk to 3 people. If you want to talk to 5, talk to 5. If you want to talk to 3, talk to 3. You pick the number. I'm comfortable if we have talked to 3 vendors, and see if the collaborative is the best. If it's not, great. If it is, great. But we'll know. That job hasn't been done. We've had meetings, but the work hasn't been done. There's been a lot of activity, but these are basic questions in any financial procurement agreement of any size that just haven't been meaningfully answered. I got a lot of salaries on this call that all seem to be thinking that someone else did the work, but it hasn't been done. Talk to 3 vendors. Come back to us. Simple. Let's move forward together. This is easy. But I take umbrage with the assertion that, well, town meeting voted for us to do it this way. That's not what town meeting was giving you, was trusting you with. They were trusting that you were going to do a careful, thoughtful job, and that hasn't been done. And please don't misrepresent the very the careful will and thoughtful will and responsible will of town meeting, who took their job very, very seriously. They're trusting you, and you're not earning it right now, Mr. Keyser.
Mr. Luz, and then we'll go to Miss Kelly. And I apologize for mispronouncing your name about 100 times.
No, that's all right. I just wanted to add quickly, in addition to the memo that, we prepared and presented tonight, very early on in the process when we were evaluating power options, we obviously looked into the vendors that they were utilizing. And I apologize, I should have mentioned earlier, in putting together the data sources that are utilized for this analysis, I had remembered that we had also referenced Mass CEC data on solar costs when we were first looking at power options and utilizing Select as well, for these projects, specifically for the McAuliffe and also looking at the school projects. So that also provided some further confidence based on, the pricing per watt, compared to other developers in the state, that it was a competitive offer. So I did want to just add some further context. Initially, while we're also looking at different options, and we determined that the PPA was the best route. We also did, look at pricing across the state, to try to ensure that, this was a competitive offer as well.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly?
So the discussion seems to keep going back to not doing a competitive process here, and that we only looked at one vendor. So the whole point of using a collaborative is that the collaborative goes through the vendors, the respondent vendors, and vets them for us. That's the whole point of using a collaborative. We've had multiple reviews from multiple entities that have recommended, including town meeting, have recommended that we use collaboratives whenever possible, because that gets, you have an economy of scale and you have a broader reach using a collaborative than you would if you did an individual procurement. In this particular instance, and with energy in general, using collaboratives does work better. The background material shows you how many entities are involved with Power Options. Power Options is the collaborative. The vendor that we're using, which is one of more than one vendor that the collaborative has used, is Select. And the collaborative did the due diligence for this particular set of vendors. We've also used the MAPC, which is a pseudo state agency that does, again, a farther reach, uses buying power for all of the state, depending on what it's buying, or at least Middlesex County, all of Middlesex County, depending on what it's buying, and we can buy from that collaborative. We buy supplies, we buy materials, we buy equipment from multiple collaboratives because they get a farther reach. We buy our fire trucks from a collaborative that's centered in Texas because that gets us better pricing than if we just look in New England or we do our own procurement, which has gotten us no good response of vendors. So the use of collaboratives is an efficient, effective way of doing procurement and gets us a much farther reach and uses a much bigger purchasing base. So in this particular instance, using a collaborative is better. We do 100 bids ourselves as a single bidder. We do those bids, but in this particular instance, the collaborative is a wiser choice. The same thing with the efficiency project. We use the MAPC resulting bid vendor, which ended up being Amoresco for that particular project. We do this, we use collaboratives because they get us better pricing. They do the due diligence and we go off of their recommendations. For you to accuse us of not doing due diligence, Sean researched the collaborative and found that they had that particular broadest reach. One of the things we want to make sure that we do is use the larger expertise of the industry. And that's what we get. We use those subject matter experts from the collaborative, not the vendor. And we have used that. The other thing that's been said is that we've poked holes in the whole tax credit issue. There are no holes poked in the tax credit issue. We're not eligible for it. The vendor, the business that does the installation is eligible for it, and they build it into their pricing. And you can make the allegation that they're not giving us the tax credit, or we can make the allegation that they are giving us the tax credit. But you can't affirmatively say that they're not giving us the tax credit. And so you can't poke that hole if you can't affirmatively say that that the tax credit doesn't trickle down into the pricing. So, we aren't eligible to get it. We can't use it to reduce costs. The installation vendor can use it to reduce costs, and they do it all the time as part of power purchase agreements. So those are my two comments.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification on the tax issue. And I think the first part of what you said is the real headline, which is in this case, going through the collaborative makes sense. And I appreciate that explanation. Councilor King.
Sorry, I moved the question.
Are there any other councilors wishing to speak? All right, seeing none. So we'll first vote on Councilor Stuart Morales' motion, which is to refer this to the full council without a recommendation up or down. All right. Councilor Stuart Morales.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor King.
No.
Councilor Cannon.
No.
Councilor Leombruno.
No.
All right, so that fails. So the next motion was from Councilor Leombruno, if I remember correctly, was to request that the administration provide multiple bids from vendors as a point of comparison, and that we'll take this up again at the next Finance Subcommittee meeting, which would be March 9th. Is that about what you were looking for?
Yeah, that sounds right. You know, and obviously, wouldn't know if it would be appropriate to put a time, a time limit on it. But it's certainly not to kick it down the road for another 6 months, 3 months. I don't know if we could put a time limit on it.
Well, I think we can request it for our next meeting. I don't know, I don't know what we'll get, but I think that, I'd like to see us get these panels on the roof as soon as possible. So, so 3 weeks from now is our next Finance Subcommittee meeting, just because of the way the calendar works. Councilor Cannon.
I think this is a good idea. I support Councilor Leombruno's motion. I think Ms. Kelly made some good points. There are cases where we have found that that collaboratives have been great for the community. We have also found cases, as I mentioned one of them earlier, where it wasn't. And the reason and the way we reach those conclusions is by doing the due diligence that Councilor Leombruno's motion asks for. That's the piece that hasn't been done. So I guess it's sort of you've reached this conclusion. Would you show your work? Because that hasn't been done. How have we gotten there? And considering how much of a centerpiece the tax credits were in the first meeting about this, I think we have poked holes and found we've come to an understanding of the true value of those tax credits as they apply to municipalities. But I hope the work that will be undertaken will show us whether or not in this case, like others, a collaborative makes sense, or in some cases, like the Maya program, it doesn't make sense. It seems reasonable. It seems consistent with other practice. I don't know why it's so difficult to do it in this, for this, but I support the motion, and we can move the question.
Thank you. We'll go to Councilor Stuart Morales and then Ms. Kelly.
Yes, I just want to note that all 5 of us know that this is a waste of time, and us voting this way is just, that's what we're showing here. I think any objective viewer of tonight's meeting can appreciate that this is an excellent deal for us. We pay nothing. We get $100,000 in savings over 20 years. Everybody who is an environmental, who works in the industry, who works in this area, who has vetted this project, is telling us to recommend that this is the right project, that this is the best project. That's why we have it on our desk right now. I think that's clear. The work that's gone into is clear with all the background information that we've received on it. So I'm calling it what it is. This is I don't know what the reasoning is, what the real reason behind this is, but it is not okay. We are in a climate crisis. It's not okay for us to say out of, in one breath, oh yeah, we're all about solar. We're all about, environment. And then when you come down to vote for it, guess what? You're about to, you just voted no. So, it's one or the other. Pick a side here and stick to it. This is a big waste of time, not just for the residents, not just for us. It delays our progress, making any meaningful progress towards environmental sustainability issues. It's tied into a lot of other projects, as you've mentioned, the Brophy Elementary School, the Fuller Middle School. So all we're doing here is delaying this by supporting this motion that's completely ridiculous. I think that we are not acting in the best interest of Framingham residents or taxpayers. As a CPA, as a person who's worked in renewable energy for a dozen years, and Mr. Cannon, yes, my experience is relevant. I'm telling you, this is the right deal. This is a good deal. We have to do this. And for you, if you decide not to listen, that's fine, but please don't bring up my credentials as my master's degree and my experience in renewable energy as things that I'm somehow supposed to apologize for. That is not what I'm going to do. I grew up on the south side of Framingham in subsidized housing. I did earn a master's degree. I have worked in the renewable energy industry for a dozen years. I have relevant knowledge and experience here, and I'm not going to apologize for my success.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly?
So let me just remark on our choice of the Maya collaborative. It had nothing to do with it being a collaborative. Maya is essentially an insurance carrier, and they pool their funding to carry the risk of insurance. We left Maya because they had just paid a multi-million-dollar claim for us, and were looking to recoup the costs by increasing rates significantly, and we jumped ship to another carrier. So that had nothing to do with whether the collaborative was the right thing for us or not. We were going to a lower cost.
Point of order, the issue was the health collaborative, not the P&C collaborative.
You would have to have negotiated that because we were Section 19 because we adopted Section 19 in 1993.
Right, I agree.
So you have to negotiate whether you join who's doing the carrier. You'd have to negotiate that.
I brought it up because I thought you were right. I'm just saying that it's an example where the collaborative is not the cheapest way out. That's the only example. And the Maya Health is a collaborative.
Yeah, but that wasn't the collaborative that we were looking at.
Right. That's my point. I'm saying, had you went there, you guys did a great job. I said this. You did a very good job with the health insurance controlling the costs. Okay, really good.
No, we didn't. No, we didn't. We had to go to GIC to keep the health insurance.
That's not talking about. What I'm saying is, that's what I'm saying. You went to GIC. It was a lot cheaper than the collaborative. That's the whole point.
The GIC is like a collaborative.
Right.
It's a state. It's a collaborative.
But so isn't So isn't Maya.
All right.
We're actually trying to. I'm talking on hand, but I did have my hand up for another issue. So sorry.
But on this topic, Mr. Councilor King, on this topic.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Councilor King.
I think it's unfortunate, Councilor Stuart Morales, that you would call the motion, whatever you call that. I don't remember now. I'm too tired. I apologize. My short-term memory happens after 10 o'clock.
A waste of time.
A waste of time. Yes, thank you. A waste of time. And then you went on the site, and I frankly, I agree with you. I think you should be proud of having the master's degree in the things you described. I really do. Okay, and you should be. And I feel similarly about myself. Okay, and I really do, and I think that's important. But I wouldn't sit here and tell you I have decades of experience in municipal government, and therefore you should listen to me more than you should listen to other people. That's where I think it's not right. Okay, you do have that, and I commend you for it. It's a lot of work, and I know it is. But if I can sit here and say, when it comes to the budget, I want everybody to listen to me, and we should do it my way, and anybody else's idea is a waste of time because I have decades of experience in municipal government, I think that's unfair. So I think it's unfair to call people's motions a waste of time just because they don't agree with you. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you. I don't think he was calling it that because he doesn't agree with them. I think, it seems very likely that we'll be in the same exact position. And I don't think that tonight's was the best use of our time or the city officials' time as well.
I agree on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Cannon.
Yes, thank you. I concur. I don't think it was time well used either. It could have been spent. I mean, if we had done some simple shopping around initially with a handful of vendors, the way any of the taxpayers who are undertaking the responsibility of this 20 agreement would, do you ultimately buy from the first car salesman that you talk to? And do you trust completely and implicitly their word? No, you probably shop around a little bit. I just wish we had done that. And I don't know what you were referring to in I don't think anybody, certainly not, I didn't ask you to apologize for your academic credentials or your professional experience. I think I asked at one point if your professional experience had to do with renewable energies broadly, or if it was specific to government contracts, because that government specificity was because it's just so unique. So if you've got a dozen years of government renewable energy, I think that's terrific. Regardless, I think it's all terrific. But I don't know where the comments came from tonight. And I also don't think it's a waste of time to ask the folks that are working for our taxpayers to consult with multiple vendors on something that is going to last 20 years and will likely be the blueprint of what we do in the future. I think that's that's your ticket to the game when it's finance related. Talk to a couple of people, shop around, see what you can do. If this is the best deal, great. Let's move forward. But let's not assume that the deal we have in front of us is the best deal because it's the only deal we have in front of us. I mean, that's just a silly way of doing it. And we would never that would never be acceptable to us in any other case. I don't know why it's acceptable now. So I don't think it's a waste of time to have to ask the administration to assess the marketplace today based on 2021 COVID numbers. So I think we've gone everywhere we can. Did we vote, Mr. Chairman? I've even lost track of that.
Well, I just thank you. I hope the councilors were listening when Ms. Kelly was explaining the process and the value of going through a collaborative. And then this wasn't just going to one vendor, the way you would just, cold calling somebody in the yellow pages. This is a collaborative. This is a collaborative that does that vetting work, and that by we capitalize on the scale of working with a collaborative like we do in many other cases.
But the value is when we check we check it against our own research and then we conclude. We don't trust them blindly. And this is unlike most of the collaboratives we deal with, which usually work exclusively with municipalities. I don't think it's not trusting them blindly. It's comparing them based on other information that our experts in our city government have. And Ms. Kelly's mentioned that, Mr. Luz has mentioned that. So we've anyway. Got to do our own research to reach that conclusion, Mr. Chairman. That's the point of the motion, and that's what should happen. Thank you. Move the question.
Mr. Keyser.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking for clarification as to what the expectation is based on the motion. All right, because it's talking about us vetting vendors. We've already done that analysis of a direct procurement to a vendor ourselves. That's what was provided tonight, and I thought it was good information. So is it that we are expected to then compare collaboratives? Are we to then call up other collaboratives and to assess whether there's better deals through other collaboratives? Because my sense is, based on the descriptions by Sean Luz and others, whether it's through a collaborative, through a vendor, that unless they're going to do a full assessment through the building, the roof, and in order to come to some comparative analysis, we could talk to either collaborators or vendors or whatever the expectation is, that it's going to be very limited information, probably not reliable information, because as Sean greatly laid out, there's a lot of complexities to it. So I'm looking for guidance as to what is the expectation that you're asking the administration to do in this motion.
Councilor Cannon?
Yeah, I'm not going to speak for Councilor Leombruno, who authored the motion, but I'm really stunned by the question. I appreciate the question, looking for guidance. I'm glad we can talk about it. But we have to face the reality that there are solar companies who are aching to do business with Framingham and extending to them the opportunity to earn our business. I'm sure they'll rise to the occasion. That times are tough for everybody now, and all business is precious. I don't know how, others can speak to the specificity of the motion, but I think the sentiment was shop around a little bit. If you're comfortable with 3 vendors, talk to 3 vendors. Go through your own process, but at least make the public feel better that we've vetted this against the current competitive landscape of the solar industry. The reason this doesn't cost us anything is because the long-term financial benefit is for the solar developer. That's what you give up. We haven't vetted what the other options are, and we haven't vetted if this is even the best PPA because we haven't done the work. In the instances that were given earlier where the collaborative has made sense or has not made sense and for other procurement deals, it's because we did our own homework internally and we compared the collaborative proposals against our own research. That's the piece that hasn't been done here. So others can weigh in on specificities if you like, but we're asking you to do what any consumer would do when shopping around for a car at the very least. I hope that's helpful, but I guarantee there are solar companies out there aching to do business with us and aching to make it as easy as possible for us to do business with them.
Not helpful in the sense that we would still, if we're expected to go directly to vendors, and the word procurement, I think, is in the motion, then is the expectation that we advertise in order to do a true vetting. That's a process, and that's going to be more than 3 weeks if we're going to follow that process. If you're expecting us to make some friendly phone calls and just talk to them, say, hey, what do you think? 11 cents, can you get us 10 cents? I don't know what the usefulness of that information without those vendors having to do a whole bunch of analysis and investment. And again, or if we're going through a collaborative, then you have to kind of match up the vendors with the different collaboratives because they need to have been vetted through a particular collaborative, then we can talk to the collaborative. So not helpful that this is a friendly, pick up the phone, call a few people process. I think we've already established that really doesn't get us good information that would change the decision that's already been done through a very comprehensive and valid process.
I think we're looking for 3 competing proposals, 3 competing bids, not can you do 10 cents. There are other terms in this agreement, whether they're the early termination fee, whether they're decommissioning. Vet the proposal, get an entire proposal. I mean, my goodness gracious, I don't know how more clear this has been, but we've, I think, addressed a number of issues in the last meeting and the first one where there are opportunities for the taxpayers to get a better benefit. And you're relying in many cases in these memos on broad industry data that isn't specific to certainly Framingham, but even municipal agreements. I don't know how to, whatever process you're comfortable with, but I think it would be wise for the taxpayer, for the city to evaluate 3 competitive bids, 3 proposals. Not get us 10 cents, not broad strokes, not around $75,000. Find 3 vendors. Oftentimes you refer to other communities that have done business in a certain way. If you're comfortable with 3 vendors, choose 3 vendors, choose 5 vendors and get proposals from them. They will move pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, they're not going to move quickly on an analysis like this because no one's going to put a price tag without doing a full assessment.
Which is easy.
We're not buying soybeans. It's not a commodity. So it is much more complex than I think you understand it to be. If we're going to truly do a comparative assessment through a procurement process, we are going to need to advertise it. And I'm not sure if this would fall under a 2-week advertising or a 4-week advertising requirement. If we're going to follow those processes rather than a collaborative, we'll have to invoke a whole bunch of procurement processes. It is not a 3-week turnaround unless the expectation is we just call up and have a chit chat, and that's not going to be useful information for anybody.
I don't think anybody has said, and other than you, something about calling in a chit chat, but it is, I think these companies, based on the current market conditions and our own research, these companies are eager to do business with Framingham because their hope is not to do a deal on the roof of the McAuliffe branch library. It's to become the solar partner for the city of Framingham. So I would imagine they're going to put their best foot forward. You're doing a phenomenal job of coming up with objections and reasons why we can't do something, but you're assuming facts, not in evidence, because the work has not been done. So
sorry, but that's what we've been listening to the whole time. I mean, you keep saying that we've not done vetting processes. You keep throwing spaghetti against the wall and trying to figure out what's going to stick. And we've done the process, full process. I'm just trying to understand what the expectation is and what the value of that process would be. Thank you.
Mr. Teaser, let's recap. You have asked a collaborative made up not primarily of municipalities, but of other nonprofit organizations who by their structure do not have the financial strength and access to bonding and access to an economic landscape that a government entity has to secure a proposal from a vendor that was chosen in 2015 when the economic landscape and the marketplace was vastly different than it is today, than it was a year ago with solar energy. You're asking us to do that without looking at anything that the city has done internally to shop around to see if the work that's been done by that collaborative, I'm sure in good faith, is actually a good deal for the city of Framingham. You've got nothing to compare it to. And you're coming up with all the reasons why we can't do basic consumer level shopping around. Put the word out. If you want to do advertising, I'm comfortable with whatever process you're comfortable with. And I'm sure that my colleagues would agree. If you need time to do that, you've had 3 years to do it. But if you need some time to do it, I'm comfortable and will support whatever process you want. But I think the sentiment is that there should be 3, call it, competing bids from different solar providers. And I think it's helpful if these solar companies know that we're shopping around, because they have to be competitive. If it sounds like this vendor knew that they were the only game in town, so are we paying a premium because they knew we weren't going to shop around? All right.
I think we've reached a point where, Mr. Teaser and the city administration sees things one way. And
the question, Mr. Chairman.
So, we can vote on this. I don't know where it'll get us. But it's not going to get us any closer to having solar panels on the roof of the library.
I hope it will. And a lot more solar in town. I believe in our administration. When they get to work on this, I think we'll have good results. I expect it, and I have confidence in their ability to do it. It just hasn't been done. Give them the opportunity to do it. Let's see what they come up with. I believe in them.
Well, it's not about believing in them. If you believed in them, then we wouldn't be spending 3 hours jerking them around tonight.
We're not jerking them around. We looked at one benefit.
No, that's exactly what we're doing.
Exactly.
So, all right. So we're voting on the motion to request these competing bids, and we'll set a date for our next Finance Subcommittee meeting, which is March 9th. Councilor King. Is he frozen? No, he just muted. Sorry, very still.
I'm sorry about that. That's what happened. Yes.
Councilor Cannon.
Yes.
Councilor Leombruno.
Yes.
All right, I know. And Councilor Morales.
Absolutely not.
All right, we'll go with that. All right. Next on the agenda is the Belknap Pool Club property. So Mr. Palini is here. I know there were Mr. Snyder is here as well. I know there were some questions about.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
it's 10:15, and I know these people have been here, and I feel bad about that. But I for one, I can't go on. I'm sorry. I think we have a rule. First of all, we have to vote for it. I mean, I'll come a different night or whatever, and I feel badly, but I just don't see how we do a good. This has been a difficult night. I don't see how we do a good job starting at 10:15, listening to this proposal. I really don't.
I hear what you're saying. I mean, they're here. There might be specific. I know there's one specific question that I heard the last time. I feel like I want to respect the fact that they've probably been sitting here waiting for 3 hours. I also know there's people in the Belknap community who are looking for some guidance on this and for some forward movement. And we don't meet again until March 9th.
Well, we can meet beforehand, but I just.
Why don't we meet beforehand, Mr. Chairman? We'll do a special meeting. We'll get them first in, first out. And because, I didn't anticipate the solar thing was going to take that long. We were, basic stuff. But I agree with Councilor King. It's not fair to anybody at 10:15 to begin the process. But I'm happy to come we'll schedule the meeting around their convenience. And I'll move that we adjourn.
Well, and then we have another agenda item as well, Councilor Stefanini's.
But I mean, I think both these things don't have to be done tomorrow. So if we have a different time, I mean, I'll meet Thursday. I'll, whatever, I don't know, whatever we have to do. I mean, I just can't. I'm still in my office. I've been here since, I've been working since 8 o'clock this morning, like everybody else, I'm sure. I just can't go in and do a good job.
I hear you, but I'm sure they've been working similarly, and they don't have any control over our behavior in our meetings.
That's very true.
But I'm not going to force a majority of. Does the majority of the subcommittee does not want to keep discussing this?
I think the majority of the subcommittee would love to keep discussing it, but the hour is 10:15, and it's probably best to do this and to do it fairly earlier in the evening.
Like, I'm not trying to impose my will. If you want to go on, I can, can we set a time, 10:30 or whatever? I mean, and then come back if we have more or whatever. I mean, I don't even know what we're discussing tonight, but I just can't imagine.
I think that's a fair compromise, because I just have one specific question in mind, and at least we can hear from them on that, and then we'll look at a special meeting, probably a week from Thursday, and so. So the question was about the one. So there's the purchase price, which I described as short money, and at least one other councilor pointed out there's also, all right, we buy it, now we have to spend a lot of money to actually get it ready to use. And in the memo, there was a $1 to $2 million figure thrown around, and I think there was a desire to know exactly, if would we have to spend that all up front, and or is there some portions that could wait, and is it going to be closer to the low end of that range or the high end, and just what the thinking is around that.
I'm happy to answer that for you. Thank you very much for having us tonight. Excuse me. Yeah, so as you mentioned, the purchase price potentially would be $315,000. There's a number of other items that do come into play. I did speak with Weston and Sampson since your last meeting to get some updated numbers and some clarification on a few things. He actually alluded to, it all depends exactly, what we want to do with the property. So, when we were looking at the conditions, and a number of us have been out there on multiple occasions, taking a look at the property, when we look at replacing the septic system that's failing, replacing the main pool filter, allowing for compliance upgrades around the main pool, the pool deck, upgrades. Some decisions would have to be made to replace the kiddie pool, or perhaps replace it with a spray deck. A new bathhouse would definitely be in order. Utility upgrades, parking lot upgrades, fencing, tree work, and work on the basketball courts. So, all this, adds up. Again, we are, looking on, kind of worst case scenarios on some of these, but they do go, up over 2 million at this point. I can go through each number if you would like. Septic system.
Not right now, I don't think.
Okay. So, I mean, all of those come with, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of price tag. I mean, really, the question is, if you do, do you pass on it, or do you purchase it and hold on to it until we're ready to decide exactly, what the city wants to do for that property? Or do we, purchase it and immediately go into, upgrades for a pool facility? So I think, the numbers would fluctuate depending on, which direction the city wanted to go. If the desire is to replace what we have there as a full pool facility, certainly that's going to cost, the most. If we want to preserve it as open space, have it as a connection to the Holtman Aqueduct, there is, out of the 6 acres there, 2 of them, the acres are buildable. The rest of it is wetlands. There's a lot of background information that has been provided in your packet, but really the price tag, from what I've been told by professionals in the business, and this is around that $2 million mark. And it also doesn't take into account operating costs after the fact. So if we do decide to run it as a pool facility, that would be the fourth, facility that we would have to consider guarding, or perhaps, take one of the other beaches offline to get enough guards, to work there. You would also need a certified pool operator, which is a specialty license in order to manage the chemicals. So, there are a number of considerations. I could go into great depth in any one of these, but considering the time constraints, I'm happy to either provide more information or answer any other questions.
Sure, thank you. Are there other questions from councilors? Councilor Cannon.
Yeah, so what was the number? And I may have misheard it. Jim, it's great to see you. Thanks for being here. Tom, everybody, and for your patience. What was the number for ADA accessibility compliance?
Sure, that was about 75,000. Although some of the ADA upgrades, on the pool deck and things like that, there's different areas of access, I guess, that you're looking at. And Jim can certainly speak more eloquently than I can, but there's access to the facility, there's access to the in and around the bathhouse, and of course, in and around the pool area. So, all of those are individual projects that address ADA issues. But I have compliance upgrades on the main pool at about 75,000. Jim, do you have other information to add?
You can go ahead, Mr. Paline.
Yeah, that's obviously just talking about the pool structure in itself. The main structure, to make the modifications that we would need to, because we're held to a higher standard, and for us to even open it to even a mild capacity, we would have to have compliance, ADA compliance, and it has 0. And the existing structure, when I toured it, the way that it's constructed is going to pose a challenge in itself. And that modifications to the structure, it's going to be cheaper to take it down and start over, and which is going to pose another challenge, because then the construction cost is going to jump up there, and we have to meet the new current code. It was made for what it was intended for, a private club right now, and it's like a camp. But for us, we would end up having to make the modifications to make the ADA. You can't even enter the facility without triggering a non-compliance issue. And all the bathrooms, there isn't anything that conforms between the showers. So there's no radius, there's no turning. And that in itself, as you previously asked, if we could do it in stages, that would be one of our biggest hurdles we'd have to achieve right away. Because if we're going to open it to the public, we have to be compliant. And we've had our challenges in ourselves and some of our existing facilities as we have now that are grandfathered in. But if we were to take this on and open it up as new, we'd have to pretty much come to full compliance. I mean, Mike is on the call, and I'm sure he can echo my same sentiments.
Yeah, no doubt, and we should absolutely.
Do we have a number? Is there a kind of a ballpark grand total on that accessibility expense? I agree with everything you said. And I won't hold you to the number, but I mean,
the thing is, the structure in itself would have to start from ground zero, Mike, because it's Councilor Cannon, I apologize for that. Because when you start with the construction, you have to continue to bring it up to the current building code. So just to make the compliance, you trip other thresholds as you're doing it, and the numbers start to add. Yeah. And it would be indicative of how big the clubhouse would end up being. And that would be tied to parking, what our expectation was for patrons in, then the bathroom count to meet the plumbing code. It would all come into play. I mean, to throw a number on it, it's expensive.
Okay, that's fine. It's certainly something for further discussion. I didn't think anything could be grandfathered in from ADA, but again, a conversation for another night. But I appreciate the insight, and especially due to the lateness of the hour. Thank you all.
Thank you. Any other councilor questions? Has there been any discussion about purchasing it and then, and I don't know if this would work, leasing it to an organization that would actually operate it as a pool club?
I know in some of the research we've done, we found out from, a lot of discussions with the current owners. The YMCA, I think, did come out or take a look at the property at one point, decided it was not a good investment for them. So, to my knowledge, I don't know if there's been other groups that have, made an offer or anything like that. Not that I'm aware of. There may be people on the call that may know of other offers, but not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. So I think, we're getting close to that 10:30 time. I don't see any other councilor hands. Given that we have 2 council meetings in a row now, how would people feel about meeting? Because I'm hearing frequently from folks in the Belknap area that they'd like this addressed, and I want to be respectful of Councilor Stefanini as well. Next week from Thursday, the 25th, are folks available to meet then for 2 issues, the Belknap Pool Club and the financial budget forums? And that way, if we're able to make recommendations on either of them, they could be presented to the council in the second.
That's fine.
Okay. All right. So we'll go with that. And thank you again, gentlemen, for your patience and time tonight. All right. I will take a motion to adjourn unless there's...
So moved.
Second.
All right. Motion to adjourn is seconded. Councilor Stuart Morales?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Leombruno?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yeah.
Councilor Cannon?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Good night, everybody.